Did those two. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Friday, July 15th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by Odd Shopper. We've got a 13-game MLB slate to break down once again today. We've already put this one in the books once, but a lot of new information to talk about, so I'm excited to dive in. I hope you guys are as well. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how you doing over there?
Pretty good. Glad to be here. My hour drive turned into an hour and a half, so I wasn't sure I was going to make it, and it's nice to be out of the car.
It's not nice to have you here, though. Would have been much better if you didn't make it, but what can we do? We're here now. Might as well just move forward. I do love, I don't have time for this, but I am giving the shout right now. Shout out to Baldy and the O for immediately hitting chat and taking a dump onto Sean V, victory lapping himself for getting Anibal Sanchez right for giving up 4 runs. Forgot to Larry C. Forgot to lower volume. Why is Josh yelling? Oh, TV is on 72. That's probably a little bit too high from a volume perspective. Larry, though, it is not your TV that is making Adam glow. That is just Adam. Uh-oh.
That
was right on cue.
That feels slightly on purpose. Okay, welcome back.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Again.
Did you take my camera?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Like, same camera, same laptop. Not really sure.
We good?
Yeah, I think so.
All righty. Well, let's get into it before you go away again. Otherwise, I'd say just leave, but you would and would not care. So
I am currently in a casino. I will be out the door by the time you finish the sentence.
Yep. The next time that camera goes off, I just assume you're just not there. It's like one of those kids that's like changing his Zoom to reconnecting during class or something. He's just like, I don't know what it is. Can't get in there.
That's what I was trying to think of. Somebody said it's Adam in Paranormal Activity. That the whole time that I was looking at myself on the screen, I was trying to figure out what I was reminded of, and that was it.
Slatebaker says Adam's been kicking it with Bruce Leroy. Alex Caceres? Or is there another Bruce Leroy?
I don't know. I don't.
Bruce Leroy is Alex Caceres to me. I don't know if that anybody else has stolen that name. I'm sure they have. It's not crazy unique. Yankees, Red Sox, Jordan Montgomery and Nathan Eovaldi. Montgomery at about 10% ownership. No one going to Eovaldi. I think these guys are probably closer than they should be, but the matchups are slightly different with the Yankees being better. How do you feel about that ownership going to Montgomery?
I think it's fine. I mentioned him on FanDuel specifically on my tournaments play video earlier at 8,700, but also at 7,900 on DraftKings. He's just sort of there. There's a few pitchers in this price range that I'm going to feel that way about. Montgomery's one of them. He's a good pitcher overall, solid 3.64 xFIP this year, just shy of a 20% strikeout percentage, which is down from his career averages. But as a result, the walk percentage is down. Decent matchup. Boston obviously has a dangerous middle of the order, but the bottom of the order is certainly not the best. So if he's able to, navigate his way through Devers, Martinez, Bogarts, it starts to open up a bit for him. But there is plenty of good pitching on this slate that is better for DFS than Montgomery. So pretty much just a secondary option for me.
There's too much good pitching to want to go to Eovaldi here, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, really tough matchup. He's a good pitcher. He's one of those guys that there's a somewhat decent chance you see him, in the sixth inning, and it's like, shit, I wish I had Eovaldi, but 1% projected ownership, 6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, just wouldn't really show up in my lineups.
Alrighty. We have no ownership coming into the Yankees or the Red Sox. Yankees got all the way up to 12th in our top stack tool, but this kind of seems like a day where we're not really getting to the bats here. Any sort of one-off Yankees bats or even a couple of the Red Sox bats seems fine, but I don't really see this stacking up.
Yeah, I don't see much here either. Not a great matchup for Boston against Montgomery. Obviously, Devers, Martinez, Bogarts, those guys are always fine, but I don't anticipate that they would show up for me too much. And then on the other side with the Yankees, there's always power upside there. They do still have a 4.8 implied run total, which is decent. But it's not a great matchup against Eovaldi. There is a lot of pretty weak pitching on this slate. It is worth noting that his strikeout percentage against righties this year is 9 points lower than it is against lefties. He's allowed a 224 expected ISO to righties, 278 to lefties. So he has had some power issues if you were looking for a reason to get to the Yankees, but they're not cheap. They're in a tough matchup. Paying up for them is probably going to force you or keep you from getting 2 of the top end pitchers. So I think they're just going to be difficult to get to roster construction wise.
All righty. Well, then let's keep it moving. We'll go to the next game up, Nationals and Braves. 4.2 run implied total for the Nats, 5.2 for Atlanta. Pat Corbin and Ian Anderson going here. Neither guy pulling any ownership. They are sub 7K, so there is some potential value to be found if you need to pay down. Are you paying down at all for Corbin or Anderson?
I don't think so. If I did, it would be Anderson. He's a more skilled pitcher than Corbin, but it's still a tough strikeout matchup for him. His strikeout numbers are down this year as well. I wouldn't anticipate really getting there.
Yeah, that's not a spot where I'm getting pitching. Corbin showed up in 2% of my sims, so I can't care on a day like today. We definitely need to talk about the Atlanta Braves bats in this one, though. Tied for second in terms of implied total for today. They are 5th in aggregate ownership. They are very expensive, but this is our number 2 top stack. If you can find the money to get to them, they seem fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. They're relatively expensive, especially at the top. The bottom of the order does give you some discounted bats. Michael Harris, 4,200, still relatively expensive, but Arcia, 3,800, Ozuna, 4,200, Duvall hitting 5th, 3,400. Looks like a really good value here. But I do think it's a really good spot, and I do think that you should be getting to these guys. Corbin certainly struggles with right-handed power in particular. There's basically nothing but that in this lineup. Matt Olson hits left-handed pitching well, so that's not really a concern either. So Atlanta does look very good as long as you can, work around the price tags.
Yeah. Cash options here. Certainly Acuna is likely, if not just in there. Anything else coming from the Atlanta side, given that they are the second team in ownership?
I think that you and I talked about it this morning. There's a few teams, Atlanta being one of them, where it's tough to say exactly who would be in cash, but it's kind of just like they're all on the short list. Like Adam Duvall at 3,400, I would think is a very good candidate to be in the outfield. Austin Riley's good, but chances are you're going to Jose Ramirez. Dansby Swanson is certainly viable. There's a good chance, though, that you're ending up with Tommy Edman, however. Yeah. So Acuna, I would say, is in there for sure. Duvall's probably in there. And then Swanson, Riley, certainly viable.
Do you have any interest in the opposite side of this one on the Nats? 16th in ownership, 16th in top stack.
Not too much. They're cheap, so I mean, I could see getting to a lineup where you get Soto, who's expensive, but then Bell, Cruz are the only other two guys above 4K. So I could see getting to them, hoping that Anderson struggles and you get a lot of upside around them. But there's plenty of other teams that I think I would get to first tonight.
We are on the same page. I don't have anything else. I think we zipped through these first two games pretty quickly. Not too bad. Let's get to game number 3. Blue Jays and Royals. This is where we'll start having a couple extra things to talk about. 5.2 run implied total for the Jays, 2.9 for the Royals. Alek Manoah and Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke just pulling in tons of ownership. No, I'm just kidding. Alek Manoah.
That's weird because he sucks outside of Kauffman Stadium.
It is true. 29% ownership going to Manoah. He is 9K. Of the highly owned guys at the top, he is pulling the second most ownership behind Robbie Ray. I see no reason you should be avoiding Manoah here. The price works, his stuff works, and a matchup against the Royals is fantastic.
Yeah, the only negative here is that a lot of this Kansas City lineup is relatively difficult to strike out, but it's also a really bad lineup. It's the same lineup that we had yesterday for Gossman. He struggled to get strikeouts, but Witt and Pasquantino are the only two above average hitters in this lineup. Manoah is a good pitcher, about a 23% strikeout percentage, 3.88 xFIP this season. He looks very good. 9K price tag, certainly reasonable as well.
Ooh, just swallowed some air there. That was not really fun for me. Yeah, I've got Manoah as the second highest projected pitcher on today's slate. I'm happy to get all of the Manoah. I'm also happy to get a decent chunk of the Toronto Blue Jays, 4th in aggregate ownership, 4th in top stack, but that's a little bit deceptive. Most of that ownership is going to Springer, Guerrero, and Kirk, and I want to get those guys pretty much every day anyway. Kirk at 17% might be a little high here, but he's a catcher, so I get it. The rest of the lineup, whether you're getting Bichette, Teoscar, Gurriel, Matt Chapman, I mean, there's so much power that's basically unowned in this lineup. I love getting to Toronto.
Yeah, completely agree. And the ownership's a bit lower today than it was yesterday since we have Coors Field on the slate. They were a team that I liked yesterday, ended up not really getting to them. And obviously that was good because they didn't come through. But another good matchup for them here at lower ownership. Greinke, 170 expected ISO allowed to lefties with an 8.5% strikeout percentage this year. 15% strikeout percentage against righties, but a 236 expected ISO. Sets up really well for a lineup that has nothing but right-handed power.
Adam, you were giving me stats there, which I really appreciate. Can you give me only road stats, please? He's on the road. We can't be intermingling these home stats. It'll skew everything that we're doing. I don't understand how we go forward here. Springer, Guerrero, Kirk, certainly on the short list for cash game options today.
Yeah, Bichette's in there too. But again, you're probably going to Edman, I would think.
Yeah. Kirk, I think, feeling mildly likely, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I had him yesterday. I think he's likely today.
Yeah. Looks
it's
good.
Not, I mean, Diaz is hitting 9th for Colorado. The Pirates catcher is hitting 9th, so you're probably not going to either of those guys.
Yeah. Are you going to any Royals?
No, I mean, Pasquantino and Witt are obviously fine if they show up here and there, but no.
Larry C said Friday road stats. Got to be specific. Is the roof open at the Rogers Center? Because it's got to be Friday in a dome with the roof open road stats.
Right.
It's like, oh, he threw 1 inning, 3 strikeouts. I assume he's going to get 27 Ks today. That's where I've always never really understood it. It's just like people naturally get that if a guy hits a home run in his first at bat, like he's not going to hit a home run in every at bat that he ever has. Like nobody thinks that that's going to be the outcome. But no one thinks to themselves like, I wonder if I have my like regression weights correctly. Because everybody understands that you have to regress that, but everybody just does it incorrectly. Nobody wants to admit it.
People just there's like a natural tendency to just think that like a decent sample size is much, much, much smaller than a decent sample size actually is. Like that comes up whenever you talk about BVP. People are like, he has 12 at bats against them. How is that not like a lot of at bats?
Right. Like if you. The perfect example is just that example right there. Like, even if somebody went 12 for 12 in their first 12 at bats, nobody thinks that that's just he never gets out. Like, that's the only thing that we can project him for.
Right.
And like, for a fact you're going to project him differently there. It's just that no one knows how to regress that to 300 or whatever you want to hit it. We're done with the Royals. We're done with the first 3 games, which means we got to talk schedule for the rest of the day. Before we do that, 525 viewers, 80 likes. Guys, I shouldn't even have to ask like this, but can we hit that thumbs up, please? That is way too low of a number. Subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. But damn, those likes are way too low. Schedule for the rest of the day, very easy. You've got Live Before Lock coming up next, 6 p.m., taking you all the way up to 7:05. Top stack tool, free today. We're going to talk about it a lot. Go to stokastic.com so that you can also access the top stack tool. All righty. Guardians and Tigers. 4.8 run implied total for the Guardians, 3.6 for the Tigers. Zach Plesac, Drew Hutchison. No ownership coming to Hutchison, obviously. Zach Plesac, though, seems to be the most popular pay down option. 14% owned right now. Clearly, I like facing the Tigers, and this Tigers lineup is not very good. Just feels like a little bit too much ownership for Zach Plesac. Like, if he's going to get to 14, there's probably a couple other guys I'd be willing to get to that aren't getting that ownership.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I understand why he's getting it, because he's facing the Tigers. You don't have much in that price range that's going to look good. If you're getting a lot of exposure to that price range, I would be mixing in some Hunter Green, some Ian Anderson, some Michael Kopech, some of these other guys that are just more talented than Zach Plesac. That being said, I think, if I'm just occasionally getting lineups where I'm getting to a pitcher down there, as long as I don't just have chalk hitters everywhere, I'm going to just put Plesac in because he's facing the Tigers and he looks the best. But I do think that's something to keep in mind. Like, if you're playing 20 lineups and you're saying, well, I'm playing the Braves, I'm playing the Yankees, I'm playing the expensive Blue Jays, so I really need this price point a lot, I probably would be mixing in some of these other more talented guys, not just saying like, oh, well, it's always Plesac.
Right. I'd be willing to take a shot on someone like German Marquez at no ownership in cores that no one's going to touch in comparison to Plesac if I just needed to get away from that ownership, but it's neither here nor there.
He kind of feels like Cutter Crawford did to me yesterday. Like, Crawford was getting more ownership than who was pitching for the Cubs? Keegan Thompson. Crawford projected better, and it was kind of just like, well, I think the ownership gap's too big. But then when I made my lineups, I still got to 12% Crawford and 3% Thompson or whatever it was, just because I didn't need either of them that much, and Crawford did project better, and most of the lineups I was using him in, I was contrarian somewhere else. So that's kind of how I see this Plesac spot. He's the first guy I would get to, but also if you're getting to that price range a lot, I would rather end up with like a mix of Plesac, Green, Kopech, Marquez, as opposed to just jamming in Zach Plesac everywhere.
This Cleveland team is like the sneakiest team on the slate in a weird way, in that they are third in ownership, 6th in top stack, 4th in top value, but the ownership is incredibly deceiving. 21% of it is going to Jose Ramirez. You get Jimenez and Kwan at 14, and then everybody else is in single digits, including Ahmed Rosario at 3. How do you stack up a Cleveland team? Do you like them? Is this a team you end up getting a lot of, or do you just naturally come in light? It's a weird stack.
I do like them because you're getting a nice combination of good plays and value. Jose Ramirez, I think, is probably the top third base option, and if not number 1, he's certainly top 2 or 3. Josh Naylor looks like a good play at 3,800. Kwan offers value. Jimenez is cheap, hitting 5th. Nate Jones still 2K flat. This is just a team that you can stack a lot of different ways and have a lot of upside here against Hutchison. But the thing is, because they're more favorably priced, you're getting more ownership than the Blue Jays, more ownership than the Braves, more ownership than the Dodgers. Not that the Dodgers are in a particularly good spot, but they're still a really, really good offense. So that's what would kind of push me away a little bit. I think it's likely that I would end up using these guys more as, mini stacks, one-offs. If I have a low-owned Dodgers team, there's no reason I can't throw, Jose Ramirez in there or Steven Kwan in there for value or something. But I think it's more likely I treat them that way than that I just run out a bunch of 5-man stacks. Especially because I like popular pitching today too. That's another thing is that, I think I'm going to be, whether it's Manoah or Kershaw or Woodruff or Ray, I'm probably going to have a good amount of these like 20 to 30% owned pitchers. So if I'm stacking a team where there's ownership throughout the stack, and then I'm going with 2 of those pitchers in a lot of lineups, it's going to become really difficult to actually be different.
Do you want any part of the number 1 value stack on the day, the Detroit Tigers?
Actually, yeah. I got to them yesterday, which surprised me because I didn't really like them against McKenzie. I think this is certainly a better spot today against Plesac. He gives up power to both sides of the plate. He doesn't have very good strikeout stuff. But the big thing for me is that the Tigers, not only are they really cheap, they're not getting much ownership. They're only projected for 2.5% aggregate ownership. So you can build some really, really high upside lineups where it's just like, if the Tigers happen to hit against a completely mediocre pitcher, you're going to look really, really good. The highest owned guy in this lineup is Reyes at 6.2%, followed by Green at 6%. Everybody else is 2% or less. I think Riley Green at 3,100 looks like a legitimate good play. Reyes is a good value at 2,400. But then, in terms of just what you're going to be able to build around it, if you round those two guys out with like Scope, Baez, Grossman, anybody else, yeah, I mean, Grossman's hitting 8, so that wasn't the best example. But, Scope, Baez, Castro, one of the Castros. The pitching you're going to be able to get along with like the secondary stack or the one-offs are going to be so good where it's just like if the Tigers throw up 6 or 7 runs, you could really be in a good spot.
You heard it here first, people. Adam is playing Fidel Castro today.
Any Castro.
Any Castro you can get. Oh, man. God, this Tigers team is pitiful.
Oh, they're horrible. And just to... I guess clarify, Sean V's not here to say it. He let us know this morning that the Tigers would probably not do well. Yeah, the Tigers probably will not do well. They suck. The entire idea, though, is that the rest of your lineup is really good, and Zach Plesac is not. 266 expected ISO to righties, 218 to lefties. These are still professional hitters, some of them even major league hitters.
Yeah. They also win this game 1 out of every 3 times they play it. Right. So there's also that. Can't ignore that kind of stuff. All right, let's go Rays and O's. 3.8 run implied total for the Rays, 3.5 for the Orioles. Luis Patino and Tyler Wells. Neither one of these guys getting any ownership. Should we be rostering either Patino or Wells?
Probably not. Wells really hasn't been getting strikeouts this year. I sent you the quote he had recently that was really interesting and kind of annoyed me, but he said that he can get more strikeouts, but that with him being on... He said a pitch count. I think it's more of an innings limit because I know they've said that he's probably not going to make it to the end of the year. That he's not trying to get strikeouts as much. It annoys me as an Orioles fan because that shouldn't be the case. But that's what it is. And, that helps explain why. Because last year he had like a 30% strikeout percentage out of the bullpen. This year he's at 16.5% as a starter. That gap is bigger than it should be. And that at least gives a reason for why that's happening. But there's no reason to think that's changing today. And then on the other side, Patino threw 78 pitches in his most recent rehab start. This is his first major league appearance since April 11th. He is one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. He was part of, I believe, the Blake Snell trade. But I assume he's not going to have too long of a leash here. I would think if he gets 5 innings, they'll be happy with that. He's not really giving you a discount on his salary. It's not a great matchup against Baltimore. So probably not somebody I would be messing with.
Okay. Let's talk bats here. You'll find something to say about the Orioles, but they are 18th in ownership. The Rays are 22nd. They are 19th and 22nd, respectively, in our top stack tool. This just doesn't. I mean, given the run total, given the park, both pitchers are good enough. Like, this just doesn't. It doesn't seem like we're stacking up Baltimore or Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not enamored with either side because the park's not great. I do have enough respect for both pitchers, both pitching staffs. Also, I mean, Baltimore, like if you get 5 innings out of Wells, you're getting some pretty good arms coming in after him. But the thing I will point out with Baltimore, with them not getting ownership, is that, like I just made the case for why I think the Tigers are kind of interesting because they're so cheap and you can build such high upside lineups around them. There's no question that the Orioles offense is better than the Tigers, particularly 1 through 6. And the only hitter in this lineup on DraftKings above 4K is Cedric Mullins. Like if you stack Mancini, you can't go Mancini, Mountcastle, so that's a bad example, but let's say you go Mancini, Santander, Hayes, Rutschman, Urias. You can basically do whatever you want with secondary hitters and pitching around them, and you're getting like mostly good hitters. So that's the case I would make. Is again, it's low probability, but if they happen to come through, you can put yourself in a position where like you have all of the best other plays. But again, low probability spot.
I've been incredibly satisfied that the last 2 games we talked about, you cited an example that you were immediately like, "That's a terrible example." So I'm anxious to see how many more games we can do where you give a 30-second spiel and then just be like, "Oh, that was terrible."
Yeah.
I got nothing else for Rays and Orioles.
Me neither.
Rangers and Mariners, 3.5 run implied total for Texas. 4.3 for Seattle. Taylor Hearn and Robbie Ray. Hearn, no ownership at 6,100. Ray, just a little bit. He's 9,800 on DraftKings and 35% owned. That is the highest ownership percentage for any pitcher on today's slate on DraftKings. He is 10,700 on FanDuel, 16% ownership there. I have Robbie Ray with the highest projection today. I think Robbie Ray is the best starting pitcher option for today. Has anything changed for you with regards to Robbie Ray? Obviously, you like him.
Yeah, I like him. I disagree slightly on him being number one, but it's not even like I think it's crazy. Like yesterday, I think you were probably the only person on the planet that had McKenzie projected ahead of Kevin Gausman, and I think that was crazy and wrong, and you ran extremely good and then didn't even play him. But today, like if you have Ray as number one, that's completely fine. I personally have an easier time making a case for Clayton Kershaw, especially at the lower ownership, as the number one guy. But if you want to say it's Robbie Ray, that's perfectly fine. The matchup against Texas isn't great. Like they do have some solid hitters at the top and in the middle of that order, but Ray's got good strikeout stuff. He's striking out 27.5% of hitters this year, 3.6 xFIP. I think he's a good play.
God, I wish that McKenzie thing would have been more lucrative for me. It would have been an even more fun, like
yeah, you just come
everything
a 50K screenshot or something.
Oh, it would have been good. Would have been good.
It would have been better if I got the 50K screenshot with McKenzie and you lost.
You would have been like, I told you, man. Let's talk bats here. We can only really talk about the Mariners side of this one. 11th in ownership, 10th in top stack. They're just a team to me, but do you have any interest in Seattle?
They made my top stacks video for both DraftKings and FanDuel, but their top stack percentage has come down a little bit since then. It's just, yeah, I think it's just like an okay spot. Julio Rodriguez is always really good. He's also expensive. Ty France, Eugenio Suarez, I like the price tags on both of those guys. Taylor Hearn is expected to follow Matt Bush. He has a lot of 228 expected ISO to righties this year, but I think it's just kind of a neutral spot.
Yeah. And then I can't imagine you like the Rangers, no matter where you put Robbie Ray in the top five, it's still Robbie Ray in the top five.
Pretty tough to make a case there.
Butthole Jenkins wants to know what's up with Ship My Paranormal Activity.
I think it's getting darker in here too. Like every time I look at the screen, it seems like I'm darker.
Well, did you switch to a darker? There you go. So like one of those is your Excel spreadsheet and the other is not.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah. Genius on the opposite side with me here, folks. Just absolute genius. Why am I brighter when the light's on my face? Amazing.
And that says how good the lighting's been in my new apartment. Because my old apartment, I used to like consciously pay attention to what screens I was on because I knew that my lighting wasn't good and it would affect it. And that just hasn't been an issue for 2 months now.
Speaking of new apartment, I don't think we talked about it. Did you ultimately have that thunderstorm, and how was it?
Oh, so it didn't really hit Baltimore. I could see some like really cool lightning like off in the distance. Kept trying to just like record the sky so I could get like cool pictures, but it wouldn't do it while I was recording. But yeah, so it was cool seeing it off in the distance, but it didn't actually hit. So I still haven't been there for like a legit, it's about to like rain through my floor to ceiling windows type thing.
Real Work says he's more of a savant. I think he missed a word in that sentence, but whatever.
Yeah, there's a word that comes before savant there.
It is. And that word is Odd Shopper, the presenting sponsor for this show. I'm not going to lie, man. The transitions this week have been fantastic. Might as well call me Caitlyn Jenner. If you're a fan of Odd Shopper, and you should be, because it is a free tool, please just hit the like button and run up past 160 likes. You good? You good over there?
I just keep hearing you say that, and I can't believe you said it.
It's fantastic stuff when you use Odd Shopper, and here's why. It costs you nothing. We'll start there. If you're trying to bet on sports, you should always be looking for the best line that you could possibly find. This will help you do that. That's why it's called Odd Shopper. You are shopping the lines that are available to you. But we don't just stop there. If you're interested in player prop bets, this is the best thing that we've got going, because we show the projection. We show the expected win rate and your expected ROI. And again, like I said from the beginning, it's free. There's no reason that you should skip out on using this tool. You can see it on the screen right now, whether you're just using it for the bets, whether you're using it for props, whether you're using it for just calculators or just as a betting resource. If you can't sports bet in your state, it's still useful for your DFS endeavors, and you can get yourself ready for when your state goes legal. So please go check out OddsShopper, presenting sponsor of this show. Let's go to game number 7, Twins and White Sox. 4.8 run implied total for the Twins, 4.2 for the White Sox. Devin Smeltzer and Michael Kopech. No one getting any ownership here. I wish the Twins were a better strikeout matchup. I might have some interest in a $7,600 Kopech, but as of right now, it doesn't appear that either one of these guys are priorities.
Yeah, and I don't really think either one should be. I kind of mentioned Kopech when we were talking about Zach Plesac as one of the guys in that price range that's getting less ownership and is more talented, but talent only takes you so far. It's still a tough matchup. He's not been very good overall this year, 4.88 xFIP, allowing 1.15 home runs per 9, walking like 12% of hitters, has a tough matchup against Minnesota. So it's, again, if you're finding yourself in that price range a lot, then mix in some Kopech because his ceiling is just as high as Plesac's, if not higher. But if you're just getting to that price range here or there, I wouldn't expect to really get Kopech. And I definitely wouldn't expect to get Smeltzer.
Twins are 7th in our top stack tool, 10th in ownership. Is there anything here for you? A lot of power in this lineup.
Yeah, I think that both sides actually look pretty interesting to me at the ownership that they're getting. Minnesota in particular, because like I said with Kopech, he has good stuff, but he has trouble throwing strikes. So not only is he putting extra guys on base with the walks, but he's likely to be working behind in counts to some pretty good hitters. That is likely to lead to, greater chances for home runs from these Minnesota guys. You have plenty of left-handed power in this lineup. He's allowed a 279 expected ISO to lefties, 170 to righties. The strikeout percentage against lefties is much better than righties, but still allowing plenty of power. You have Arise, who's just a good hitter, Kepler, Polanco, Kirilloff, Gordon, all from the left side, and then the right-handed hitters, in particular Correa and Buxton, are both just really, really good. So who really cares? So I think the Minnesota side looks pretty good against Kopech at low ownership.
Yeah, he's just so prone to put a couple guys on. You get those guys on, and all of a sudden Max Kepler puts one in the cheap seats, and it's 3, and then he does it again, and Kirilloff does it, and all of a sudden things are looking pretty damn good for a twin stack. So a little bit more interesting just because of their matchup. I see this ceiling. Do you see anything on the opposite side here for the White Sox? 13th in ownership, 10th in top stack.
Yeah, I think that it's a good spot for them. You and I mentioned it this morning, and I still feel the same way. I'm kind of surprised that their implied run total is as low as it is because Smeltzer is not particularly good. 234 expected ISO to righties, 14.9% strikeout percentage, 303 expected ISO to lefties. I know the White Sox have struggled this year, and they're missing Jimenez again, but you still have Anderson, Moncada, Robert, Abreu, Vaughn, Pollock. These guys all have track records as good hitters. Josh Harrison is a cheap option with second base, third base eligibility. So, I get it's a big slate. There's a lot of options to get to, but it does feel like the White Sox are going a little bit on their own here.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Luis Robert in particular, just an expensive outfielder, but I think he stands out today, especially getting a lefty. I don't have anything else for Twins White Sox, though.
Me neither. I'm debating if I want to register tournaments and just be a half hour late to Topgolf. So I'm sure if I do, I'll lose like $5,000 on tournaments and then be mad that I was late to Topgolf.
As long as you play Robbie Ray, you'll be fine. Astros and A's, 4.6 run implied total for the Stros, 3.3 for the A's. Jose Urquidy and Cole Irvin. Urquidy, 14% owned now at $8K. And I think that seems pretty reasonable. That's like basically exactly where I have him. So I don't have much to add. If you need to get out of that really pay up section, whether you're going to Urquidy or Jordan Montgomery, I see both of those guys as pretty similar.
I agree. Urquidy's he doesn't have great strikeout stuff. He's had issues with right-handed power this year, in particular with a 300 expected ISO, but he's facing the A's. Not much right-handed power to speak of there. Maybe Laureano or Murphy get into one, but it's a pretty solid matchup for him. I feel very similarly on Urquidy as I do Plesac. He's just going to project a little bit better than other guys in that price range because he's facing a really bad offense. Ideally, I'm going to just get to 2 of those top 6 or so pitchers that I really like, but if I can't quite get there, Urquidy's fine.
Okay. Cole Irvin?
No, I'm good. Tough matchup, not a great strikeout pitcher. Don't see any real reason to get there.
Okay. Well then, The boy from Cali wanted to know about Irvin. Short-handed Houston lineup. Not short enough. They are 8th in ownership, 11th in top stack. Still a decent-ish lineup. I mean, like, it's not bad. It's bad for Houston. It's not bad. Like, it's still significantly better than the Oakland lineup. Sure. I'd be fine getting some of Houston as a stack, but I think they're basically properly owned where they are.
Yeah, they kind of just turned into a different stack. It normally with Houston, it's like they have 5 or 6 guys that are really good, but they're expensive. Now it's like they have Kyle Tucker, Bregman, and Pena that you actually want. And then they just have a bunch of dudes that you can use to offset that salary and actually get a pretty decent value stack as well. So it's still somewhat appealing, just for different reasons, but certainly not as stacked a lineup as you normally have there.
Kyle Tucker looks great. I'm happy to take the lefty.
Irvin's not been. I mean, so his results have been good. His expected results haven't against lefties this year. 260 WOBA allowed, 349 expected WOBA. 0.83 ISO allowed, 194 expected ISO allowed. So, and Tucker is just good in general.
Right. I got nothing else here. Oakland is a decent value stack, 3rd in top value. Are they anything that you want to get to today?
No, I don't think so. They're cheap, and I mentioned Laureano and Murphy as actually being in decent spots. But the thing is, there's enough other teams that are cheap that aren't getting ownership that I think I'd be a little bit more interested in, like Baltimore, like even Detroit. Okay. I got 11% 6 of 6 in the milli, and it's only 4% for the field.
Is that real?
Doesn't seem like it should be, but that's what Cut Sweat says.
I feel like it's more than that.
Are they done?
I had a bunch too. Yeah, I think they're done. Yeah, I had a bunch too.
Maybe they have like an error or something.
I don't know. Cut ended up being even.
I see that. I got 13% through in the 200K to first and 11% in the milli, and this says that it's like 4.3% in the milli.
Sims aren't up yet, are they?
No, but I also forget where to find this. Like, I know the website, but I don't remember where.
Yeah, neither do I. Dude, it was screwing with me so bad last week. I opened it up and I was just like, I'm going to play golf a lot now, so I might as well pick up Cut Sweats again. So I went to it and I was just like, I can't. They don't like. Are they only running it for the American event? Like, how fucking stupid is this? And then I realized that I had to click like the little flag in the top corner that like the event that everybody was at was not the default event. And I was just like, I'm such a moron.
But the week I won, I wasn't even in their sim because like I was so far down the board. So like, that was exciting. They were like, oh yeah, and then like the next week they ran it, and I had like the 5th best chance of winning and just got smoked.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I don't think they have it up yet for the next 3. Oh, there is a. Have you drilled into the Cut Sweats, like for your contest to see the actual 6 of 6 percentages? They're in there right now if you wanted to look.
I don't totally understand what you're asking.
Okay, if you click on the actual contest itself in Cut Sweats and then go to cut distributions, assuming it's updated, like I can see my 6 of 6 versus the field.
Okay, yeah. So this has it. So I'm still beating the field, but yeah, 8.6% for the field.
Okay, yeah, it's 8.71 in the birdie. I got what's 40% of 20? Jesus, 4? No,
8.
10% is 2. Yeah, all right. Well, I got 8 through in the birdie of 20, so I'll take it. I don't play much in golf because I'm terrible at it.
I'm not good at it either, but it'll be my most profitable sport for a very long time.
From an ROI perspective?
Or just a pure profit, either one.
No, well, that can't be right.
Why?
What did you hit for in golf?
175K.
Fuck, I totally forgot about that. Never mind. I totally forgot.
A week after hitting for 30K?
Dude, I totally forgot. I thought it was just 100, and I was just like, I mean, it can't be for a while. Like the next 100K you hit in baseball or basketball will make it that by default, no? But that makes sense.
Yeah.
ROI obviously not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, and I don't have the ego to play high stakes golf like I do baseball or basketball, so I'm not going to cut into those profits like I would.
Why not? Because you're like, you do. You know you do.
Okay, I do have the ego. I don't have the confidence in my golf.
Okay. Adam could retire right now.
Nope.
I mean,
go check my June on Twitter.
Yeah. Retire. How much money do you think you need to retire at 34 or whatever the
32.
hell age you are? Whatever.
32.
Either way, same number. It's a lot more than 175K.
I could.
You couldn't retire on 1.75 mil. I mean, like you could, but you would live the life. You're not living the life you're living.
No, I was gonna say like I could like conceivably try and retire from content maybe, and like just grind, DFS, gambling in general. But that would still be super stressful. I definitely couldn't just like retire and go do whatever I want.
Nate, you need to go follow Adam on Twitter so you understand what happens when you hit 100K and then lose 90 of it in the following month.
Yeah, I mean, I've hit 100K plus, I think 8 or 9 times now, but I'm not sitting on $1 million on DraftKings.
No. Yeah, it's... Cardinals and Reds, 4.7 run implied total for the Cards, 4 for the Reds. Andre Payante and Hunter Green going here. 7,500 for Hunter Green. Big time strikeout stuff. Good park. Cardinals are decent. What do we do here with Green? Is there upside?
This is the kind of guy that, like, back in the day when I was hand building baseball lineups, I would just play a bunch of. Like, I'd be like, this guy's going to be low owned. He has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Woodruff. I'll take my chances. Like, the upside's so high. I don't play like that anymore. It's still, I think, a reasonable case to be made, especially if you're playing limited lineups. He's certainly more talented than Zach Plesac, and he's getting like 1/5 the ownership. He's got much, much more strikeout upside, but the Cardinals are not the Tigers, and Plesac's, going to just look a little bit better. So I'm just throwing, as with the style of play I play, I would just be throwing Green into that Michael Kopech bucket where I probably wouldn't get much. If it turns out that for some reason I really need pitchers in that price range, I'd start mixing him in more just because he does look under-owned. But chances are it's just if Hunter Green goes for, 28 DraftKings points, it probably doesn't even matter that much because he's going to be like 2% owned and there's going to be other pitchers that do the same thing.
I do want to touch on John Bond 12 said, how's the horse? The horse is going to be okay. Hematoma has to go to NC State for, I don't know, some vet place that takes care of horses. Luckily, I'm going to say this out loud because none of it matters. Luckily that we have horse insurance, but apparently the costs associated with taking care of this horse ailment is like $6,000 or something insane. So thanks to my wife for having horse insurance. Otherwise, we were sending that bad boy to the glue factory. Bat Jones 22 with the super chat said, hey friends, any love for low owned Kevin tonight? Kevin. I'm going to need your help on this one.
I don't know. I was just thinking about it.
Kevin. I don't know the question. I can't figure it out. Bat Jones, you mind tossing a last name in there or something? If you just put it in chat, you don't have to send another super chat. So anyway, let's talk bats here. Cardinal side, Tommy Edman going to be in the short list for cash options. The Cardinals are 6th in ownership, 8th in top stack. There's a little bit of value here. Should we be getting to the Cardinals on the opposite side of green?
I'm interested in it. They were projected to be a bit over-owned today or this morning. They still are now, even though the ownership came down a little bit. But that's really being driven by Tommy Edman at 19%. Every other hitter in this lineup is sub 10%. Tyler O'Neill's next at 9.8. That's not enough ownership that I'm really worried about it. Even Edman with second base shortstop eligibility, like I think he's a really good play. But as far as the stack goes, Goldschmidt and Arenado are both really good. You have Carlson, who's cheap. O'Neill's cheap. Gorman's cheap. Donovan's up to 5th. He's inexpensive. Corey Dickerson's in there at basically minimum salary. And, Hunter Green has very, very good stuff. He's going to be a very good pitcher in Major League Baseball, but right now he struggles with preventing power. He just hasn't been able to limit that to either side of the plate. 251 expected ISO to righties, 205 to lefties. this is a really high upside spot for St. Louis, a team that's difficult to strike out against a pitcher that isn't very good at controlling what happens to the ball when it isn't a strikeout. Like, he basically strikes you out, walks you, or gives up a home run. And this is a team that is difficult to strike out.
The old 3 true outcomes pitcher.
Right.
I said it before, but you're with me, right? Edman is certainly either likely or in consideration for cash. Getting a second base shortstop $3,300 guy, that's probably the spot in the leadoff spot. Reds bats, Jonathan India and nothing else?
Yeah, India's cheap. I think he's a solid option. The rest of the team, though, pretty tough to like. Payante doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, does get a lot of ground balls, limits power really well, but yeah, just kind of not near the top of my list. It does look like good hitting weather here too. 90 degrees in St. Louis. Having lived there, I can guarantee that it's like you can't breathe and it's insufferably humid.
How long did you live in St. Louis?
Moved there in October 2015, moved back in June 2016. So a little, like 9 months, a little less than a year.
That must have been an awful move.
Wasn't bad. I mean, I was able to just pack everything in my small car, so I didn't bring a lot. I left like because I was staying with another, like, a law student that was a year ahead of me, in his house, and so I just was like, "Hey, you have a furnished room now," and just left all my shit. So
yeah, okay, there you go. Let's hit course. Hit that like button. Let's get up over 200. 5.9 run implied total for the Rockies, 5.1 for the Pirates. Herman Marquez and Jose Quintana. We're not going to Quintana that much, I know. Well, I guess I can't even cast it away that quickly. Do you have any interest in Marquez or Quintana?
Not really. If I was going to one, I would say Marquez, just because I think the Pirates' offense is worse than the Rockies. Marquez is probably better than Quintana, especially given that there's 7 right-handed hitters in the Rockies lineup against Quintana. But Marquez, even at the cheaper price tag, he's just really similar to how I was on Minaya and Musgrove in that Padres series, where, is he going on their own? Would it be really cool to play him and you'd feel good when he like has a good start? Sure, but it's just not the kind of play that I'm going to typically make or need to make.
Pirates are first in ownership. Rockies are second in ownership. Pirates are third in our top stack tool. Rockies are first in our top stack tool. The question to you is, which team's better tonight?
I prefer Colorado. I like this lineup. 1 through 6, you have some solid right-handed bats with Joe, Bryant. Blackman's not a right-handed bat. I didn't realize he was in there. 5 solid right-handed bats with Joe, Bryant, Crone, Rogers, Iglesias, Blackman's.
Oh, well, that's a bad example.
Yeah, that was supposed to be Randall Grichuk. He's hitting 8th. Point is, there's some decent right-handed bats for the Rockies in this lineup. Quintana going into Coors Field, he's had issues with righties this year anyway, so I like the Rockies. The thing that kind of pushes the Pirates up for me, though, is that they are so cheap. And if you look through the teams individually, the ownership isn't really that much different. Like, most guys on the Pirates are between 10 and 18%. Most guys on Colorado are between like 10 and 16%. So I do think the value for the Pirates actually ends up pushing them up ahead of Colorado for me, even though I like the Rockies hitters more.
Okay. Let's hash it out. How much do you think you're getting between the Rockies and Pirates in a cash game today? Because I think the range is like sort of wild, and the guys specifically are a total crapshoot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you can definitely make the case for Van Meter at second base at 2,900, Vogelbach at 3,400 if you're not getting to like Vlad Guerrero, assuming he's in the lineup, which he is. Yeah, so like if you're not getting to Vlad Guerrero at 5K, if you have to pay down at first base, it's probably Vogelbach. It could be Crone. Like, I guess it could be Crone, Guerrero, Vogelbach. Probably not playing Brian Hayes because I assume you're playing Jose Ramirez. Probably not playing Brendan Rodgers because you would probably play Van Meter on the other side. Iglesias is viable, but I think you probably play like Swanson. So I would say like 1 through 6 for the Rockies are viable, but there's not one in particular that I would say is the number one at their position. For the Pirates, I think there's a good chance Van Meter is the guy at second base. Vogelbach is probably top 3 at first base.
Okay. What a weird game. I got nothing else here. Just be aware of what you're building if you get to Rockies and Pirates. Although none of the ownership today is all that outlandish, but still be aware of what else you have. And now that we are one like short of 200, which we're going to get as I give this promo, MLB DD, one big word, all caps, 5 letters, MLB DD will get you a Stokastic Plus weekly pass for 50% off. Now, this covers everything that we have. MLB, so you're getting projections and ownership and top stacks and top pitchers. You're getting PGA, which is projections and ownerships and top golfers. You're getting MMA, which is projections and ownership and top fighters, plus F1 and God, what else am I missing? What are other sports that are happening right now? I have no idea. Soccer's coming back soon. Basketball eventually. And obviously, that's not going to help you on a weekly pass. But once you get in for a week, you're going to be here forever. We both know that. And you only have to, you're checking it out for 50% off. It's a fantastic deal. If it happens to not be your particular cup of tea, and it should be, no matter what kind of tea you like, this is going to be your cup of tea. Use the promo code MLBDD for 50% off your first week. 3 games to go, Angels and Dodgers. 3.3 run implied total for the Angels, 4.5 for the Dodgers. Patrick Sandoval and Clayton Kershaw. Sandoval pulling no ownership. Kershaw, 25% owned. That is, I don't know, in the middle of everybody else. Like, whatever, 1, 2. He's 4th in ownership today. But it's basically Robbie Ray, then everybody else. Talk to me about the guy that you think is the best option on today's slate.
So Kershaw's thrown 98 and 102 pitches in his last 2 starts. That's, to me, like the most important thing because we're not talking about him being limited here. He's facing an Angels team that doesn't have Mike Trout again. So you have Stefanich at the top, who's tough to strike out, Ohtani and Ward that are good. Rengifo is the cleanup hitter on this team. There's the Rengifo home run. But that's not a major league cleanup hitter. Joe Adell has some power. He also probably is going to strike out 4 times. Jared Walsh is going to strike out a bunch. VR strikes out a bunch. Suzuki's a more difficult strikeout matchup than Stassi, but he's hitting 8th. Who really cares? And then Brandon Marsh is another free strikeout. There's so many strikeouts in this lineup. And then Kershaw this year, 27.6% strikeout percentage, identical to Robbie Ray. 4.8% walk percentage, basically half of Robbie Ray. 2.91 xFIP is 0.7 of a run better than Robbie Ray. 0.7 home runs per 9 is 0.6 home runs per 9 better than Robbie Ray. And the Angels are, their current lineup at least, is worse than the Rangers without a doubt. So and Kershaw's cheaper and Kershaw's lower owned. So I have a really hard time saying Kershaw's not the best pitching option.
I mean, if you want to make the adjustment for ownership, I mean, I still don't agree with you. Then I'm going to Manoah, but just from a raw points perspective, I can't get away from Robbie Ray. And we all know where this goes. When Adam and I have a back and forth about how people should be projected, I look smart.
For what it's worth, the Stokastic website right now has, son of a bitch, Robbie Ray 19.8, Kershaw 19.7. But I looked and it was 20 for Kershaw and like 19.8 for Ray. And then I refreshed it and lost those 0.3 of a point. But
another great example from Adam during this show.
19.7 at 9,400 is better than 19.8 and 9,800.
Now I'm going to win by 0.1 of a point.
Trout is not in the lineup, Josh.
Yeah. Looks better now. Wait, you're not talking to me. You're talking to chat.
I'm talking to Josh Gillum that said Trout is expected to play for what it's worth. I'm looking at the Angels lineup and he's not in the lineup.
That certainly helps. Although probably offset by the fact that Trout does tend to strike out a little bit. So,
I mean, you're replacing him with Joe Adell and Brandon Marsh.
Well, I already had Joe Adell in the lineup, so now I'm replacing him with Brandon Marsh, who's worse. So, none of it matters here. I still like Kershaw. You and I are saying the same things. We both think Robbie Ray and Clayton Kershaw are very good options today.
Yeah. It's just, it's splitting hairs. It's mostly me just making this more of an argument because I'm pissed off about McKenzie yesterday.
If it helps, I have Robbie Ray by 3.5 points. That is not updated for the Angels lineup, but I do. So just putting it out there.
Someone said Josh wins at life. Josh has a horse that he just had to pay like $5,000 for. He's not winning at shit.
I mean, I am winning at life. Everything that I do in life, I'm winning. I'm promising you that. It's good.
Yeah, DFS aside.
It's pretty comfortable. I mean, what are we talking about here? Do you want me to win a DFS?
No,
because I do. Really. I would like to stop not stacking in videos that I put out every day, making it look like I get my ass kicked in baseball. That's not helping for sure. Not the best marketing materials in the world to be like, hey, I'm going to try something different out for this entire series.
I do appreciate you being my guinea pig and just running with this non-stacking thing while I win with stacks.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's really not fun. Considering that when I open up Roto Tracker and sort by ROI, MLB is at the top, and it's slowly but surely going down because I'm just burning my money. It's brutal. It's brutal. But yeah, I'm winning at life for sure. When's the last time I won a tourney? I don't know. I can give that answer if we really need it. Sometime this year.
I'll say I feel like I remember you winning.
Yeah, sometime earlier this year. Some 3 max in NBA.
And the thing to keep in mind too, like I win tournaments more frequently. I also play way more volume and you don't have anywhere close to the downswings I do. So like you don't have to win tournaments every month or two to like stay ahead like I do.
No, I mean during the NBA season, I generally speaking play one tournament, the biggest 150 max. If I win that once during the NBA season, my entire season is a success.
Right.
If I don't, it's a gigantic failure. But I don't play a lot of I don't get into a lot of contests. I get into one at a heavier number.
Yeah, the volume thing is just something to keep in mind. Like if I won as infrequently as you, I would have been broke a long time ago. But like I also play a lot of shit that you don't play.
Yeah, it's not even close, I can't even imagine. I don't even know how you guys balance that kind of stuff. We don't have time for this conversation. The Dodgers are 5th in top stack and 13th in ownership. Spoiler alert, I'd like to get to the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ownership's lower than it should be. I do have a lot of respect for Patrick Sandoval, so I don't think, looking at the top stacks tool, we have the Dodgers up there. It's Colorado, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Dodgers, Cleveland. I don't think Patrick Sandoval is in the same conversation as Quintana, Corbin, Marquez, Greinke, Hutchison, or Kopech, or Green, or Taylor Hearn. Like, if you look down the top stacks tool, there's nobody remotely close to Patrick Sandoval in skill level until you get to Nathan Eovaldi against the Yankees. So that's kind of my case against the Dodgers, and they're really expensive, but they're also getting 3% ownership. And if you look at those other teams at the top, the next lowest, the lowest aggregate ownership on any team ahead of the Dodgers is 8% on Atlanta. Then you get the Dodgers at 2.5%. So, I don't like the matchup against Sandoval, but these guys are good enough they can hit against anybody, and they're not getting much ownership.
I just pulled up my Roto Tracker. This is so irritating. I had to do content on the first day of the MLB season in 2019, and it stopped. I just didn't have the balance at that point in time because that was when I was also producing the shows before it. Had the highest score of anything on FanDuel that I could find, cleaned up, won the pinch hit. It would have been a 100K lineup that I normally would have been in, just didn't enter that tournament because of it. I was like, oh, opening day, first day of baseball. I can't get in that right now and risk that I don't get my shit in. That hung a 308.5. I was not a happy camper. So shout out to March 28th, 2019. Angels bats for you? Probably not now that Trout's out of the lineup too.
Yeah, I don't have the Angels.
Alrighty. 2 games to go. Padres and Diamondbacks. 4.2 run implied total for the Pods, 3.1 for the Diamondbacks. Yu Darvish and Madison Bumgarner. Darvish a part of that Woodruff, Ray, Kershaw, Manoah group where he just looks good. 8,900 matchup against the Diamondbacks. Just one of those guys I want to play.
Yeah, pretty cheap. His strikeout percentage is down a bit this year, but he's got a long track record of being a good strikeout pitcher, and so the strikeouts could go up. And even if they don't, the benefit has been that he's not giving up as much power this year. He's not walking as many guys. The Diamondbacks lineup is below average. There are some strikeouts to be had. 3.1 implied run total is actually identical to the Angels. Darvish is just another pitcher that looks good.
Yeah, he really does. Bumgarner doesn't. I don't think the Padres bats do either. They're 7th in aggregate ownership. I don't really see it in their ownership either. The highest owned guy is Alfaro at 9%. They're 16th in top stack. I don't want to stack this game at all.
I'm more interested in Padres, I think, individually or in mini stacks. I have a hard time thinking I'm getting to a lot of 5-mans, but Manny Machado as a pivot away from Jose Ramirez. I think Ramirez is the guy that you would get to first. He's the guy that I think you get to in cash, but Machado is really good. Bumgarner's not. You're getting a nice ownership discount there. Similarly, you can play Alfaro over like Alejandro Kirk. Ruiz is 2K flat, has like 60 stolen bases in the minor leagues this year. If the guy gets on, you're getting extra points. So mixing these guys in at relatively low ownership makes sense. I do have kind of a hard time getting to them as full stacks though.
Okay. I got nothing else in this game. Like there's just nothing to talk about. You ready to close it out?
Yep.
Remember, guys, live before lock coming up next. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this show. I think this was a fun one. So reward us. Let's get up to 300. Alex Wood going for the Giants. Brandon Woodruff going for the Brewers. Wood, 10% owned. Woodruff, 26% owned. I'm happy to get to Woodruff. I think he's a little overpriced here. It just makes it, to me, a little bit easier to get to guys underneath him. But at the same time, I think he looks great.
Yeah, agreed. I think Woodruff looks good. I'm just still kind of confused why he's getting the same ownership as Manoah and, more or less the same ownership as Manoah and Kershaw when those guys are cheaper. Not that they're as good as Woodruff, but they're cheaper. They have better matchups. I think there's going to be a lot of lineups where I just don't pay that extra money for Woodruff, even though, he does look very good.
I don't remember having 2 decent hockey days. That's weird. I just can't stop looking through my roto tracker now. That's years ago. Talk to me about Alex Wood, though. 8,600, about 10% owned. We see Urquidy around that same amount, Montgomery around that same amount. Do you have a preference between any of those guys?
Not really. I mean, I think Wood's the best pitcher of the group, but Milwaukee's also a hell of a lot better than Oakland and, Detroit. Wood this year has a 3.2 xFIP, 23% strikeout percentage. I do think he's maybe getting a little bit less ownership than he should be when Plesac's getting 14%, but you're still talking about a $1,400 price difference as well, $600 to Urquidy. So I think Wood's ownership makes sense.
Sum it up. Favorite pitchers?
Kershaw, Manoah, Ray, Darvish, Woodruff.
There we go. Ray is the right answer for that question. Favorite stacks?
Atlanta, Toronto, Minnesota, St. Louis.
Adam's going to go enjoy Topgolf. I'm going to go enjoy some charcuterie and a glass of wine with the wife after I put out my betting video. Live before lock is next. Do not miss it. Stay right here and hit that like button on your way to waiting for the next couple minutes until the show starts. Adios, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Out of the way first, before we dig into what makes him decent. First, the injuries. Albeit mostly minor ones, they've been an issue, no question. He's missed 8 games to injuries over the last 2 seasons, and I'm not counting Week 17 versus Washington in 2021 or 2020 because they intentionally lost that game and smartly. If Sanders doesn't stay on the field, though, we don't get fantasy points. It's that simple. Second, he inexplicably finished with 0 rushing touchdowns last season, 0 touchdowns. And having a rushing quarterback in Jalen Hurts doesn't do him any favors in that facet of the game. Third, there's some bad here. Third, Sanders' passing involvement was minimized last year, and in 2020, he really struggled with drops. He led the league, as a matter of fact, with 8 drops in only 12 games in 2020. Brutal, truly brutal. But last year, 1 drop, 32 targets, not bad. It was just that his passing involvement as the season went on came down. I'll also point out, though, that they just stopped passing altogether. And I don't necessarily think that'll be the case this year. And lastly, Eagles brought in A.J. Brown. They brought him in to bolster their passing game, setting him up with a strong trio of weapons. They got Brown, you got Devonta Smith, you got Dallas Goedert. But I don't actually see that as a bad thing, as some others do who are worried about rushing volume, right? And I'll tell you why, because it's right now time to talk about the good, and that's what we've all been waiting for. Some of you guys are going to be with me on Sanders by the end of this. I know it. The Eagles have the 9th best odds to be the highest scoring team of the 2022 season. Don't bet on it, but they're top 10. They're 9th. If you look at sports books in terms of the highest or the best odds to be the highest scoring team of the year. That's pretty damn good for this Philadelphia Eagles team. More importantly, Pro Football Focus projects them to have the #1 offensive line in the league. #1, okay? And as far as run blocking goes, dominant. They're going to open up crater-sized holes for Miles Sanders. I guarantee you he's going to have some long touchdowns this year. If not, if he doesn't come back here, call me every name in the book. I deserve it. And Sanders' rushing prop is 7.5. Rushing touchdown prop is 7.5. The under slightly juiced, but still 7.5 rushing touchdowns. So clearly, bookmakers and myself see last year's complete absence of touchdowns as more of an anomaly more than a standard. That's good. And ultimately, Sanders, despite a wildly underwhelming season that saw him finish as the running back 46 in 12 games, still averaged 5.5 yards per carry, which among all running backs with at least 150 carries was tied for first with Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, and Tony Pollard. Pretty good company to be in. He's going to have those breakaway touchdowns, right? Running behind the dominant line. He's going to get goal line opportunities again, even though Jalen Hurts is there. And he's going to get a ton of work when he stays healthy. He's the clear bell cow back. I don't want to hear anything about Kenneth Gainwell. He's the clear bell cow back. And we saw that last year when they changed their offense to become more run focused in Philly. Nick Sirianni realized.
What is going on, everybody? It's time for a little MLB Live Before Lock. Heading into the All-Star break. I know there's also games tomorrow, but I'm not going to be here tomorrow. It is my brother's 30th birthday party. I'll be celebrating that with him. So this is going to be my last show for, about a week or so, because then we got the MLB All-Star break. So I'm really excited to do the show. I've not worked with Terry in a minute. We're going to get to chop up some baseball, which I'm excited about. Do me a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, if you have any questions about any kind of projections or anything like that today, I have good news for you, because you could sign up for a Stokastic Plus Platinum membership using the promo code MLB Live, and that's going to get you 50% off when you sign up for your weekly package on that first week. And we've got everything over here: ownership projections, player projections, top stacks tool, top pitchers tool. It really has all the information you need to make some money playing MLB DFS. So Terry, let's dive into the slate now. But first things first, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, bud. It's been a quiet week. Got the air conditioner fixed finally yesterday. That took all day. 2 trips to Best Buy. First one I bought was a dud. Got it in the window. 12,000 BTUs, all psyched. Turned it on. It was just a fan. Compressor never came on. That was fun. So I had to take it back out of the window, back down to Best Buy, multiple Ubers. Fun day, but it's nice and cool in here today.
That's good. Yeah. So, I mean, in my house right now, because everything's getting painted, so they had to open up all the windows to do some stuff around the paint. So it doesn't even matter that I have central AC in my house, because all the windows are open. It can't keep up. So it's just 1,000,000 degrees in here all the time. So I've got fans blowing on me while we're doing the show. But more importantly, we've got baseball to talk about. Gigantic slate. Coors Field back in our lives, which it was gone for one slate. Now it's back in here. At least it's 2 shitty offenses, the Rockies and the Pirates, but obviously it's Coors Field, so they're both going to be playable. We're about to start breaking down all the pitchers on this slate. But first, Terry, just any kind of overarching thoughts you have about tonight's games.
It's going to be an interesting one, just given that matchup at Coors, Pirates and Rockies, not exactly the 2 best teams in baseball. So that's going to be an interesting inflection point. You and I have talked about Roman Marquez in various slates in the past, and this might be a one where I dabble. 7,500 on FanDuel, 69 on DK. He's not exactly projecting well for me, but it might be one of those slates where I take a few weird shots with the pitching at Coors, maybe get away from the bats. Everybody, I think, knows at this point about me, I typically don't land on Coors all that heavily. So when it goes off, or when it's at least relevant, it kind of hurts me. And that's been the case the last few times, but I'm probably going to lean that way again. I think that's the big inflection point. And then, a lot of interesting spots like the Yanks Rays not flashing a ton of power. Those are 2 teams that typically come up a lot, but not really that much tonight. So I'm interested to get into it and hear some of your thoughts. So.
Yeah, and I mean, not all that dissimilar from me. I don't play Coors Field all that often, although today it doesn't look crazy overowned, so I think it's easier to get to than some of the other slates we've had. Sure. But another thing too is kind of like you. I've been playing a lot of pitchers at Coors Field lately, not to the point where it's like, oh, I'm building my lineups around Herman Marquez today, or last week it was, or during the week it wasn't like I was loading up on Padres pitchers, but I certainly had Sean Manaea and Joe Musgrove in my player pool, and Mike Clevenger also pitched during that series. All guys I got to during those games, and I think this is kind of for similar reasons, we could get to somebody like Herman Marquez today against the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are pretty negatively leveraged in our tools today, but. We've also got good pitchers to talk about, not just pitchers at Coors Field that we feel kind of shitty about rostering. We've also got the likes of Clayton Kershaw, Robbie Ray, Alek Manoah, Brandon Woodruff. So, Terry, I want to know, if you could only roster one pay-up option today, who would be the guy you'd go with?
Ooh, that's a good question, because there's a few of them. I think I would have to just kind of lean Kershaw, just because that raw ownership number is relatively low on him on both sites. 8.7% raw ownership versus like double that for Ray or for Manoah on the FanDuel slate puts him at just a negative 1.5 leverage score. On DK, it's a little bit closer, 24.2 versus like a 27 for Manoah, higher than that for Ray, higher than that for Woodruff. So I think I'm leaning Kershaw there. I really like that spot. No Trout in that lineup. There's tons and tons of strikeouts on the board for him. And, when you break down that lineup, if you're looking at it, yeah, you've got Ohtani still to deal with. And people see Taylor Ward there. Taylor Ward has been atrocious since the beginning of June. He had a great April through May, or March through May rather, and he's just been really, really bad since the beginning of June. So, I mean, we're talking about an extended stretch here where he's kind of come back to earth. The numbers still look good on the surface, over 280 plate appearances, but looking at those last 2 months, he's been more the player that I think we kind of thought he was than that guy who flashed all that power early on. So this is a non-threatening lineup going up against Kershaw here.
So now here's the question, though. Which is the worst lineup, the Kansas City Royals or the Los Angeles Angels? Because my answer is Alek Manoah, because of that Royals lineup. It is something to behold right now, because
sure
you've got Bobby Witt, who's one of the top prospects in baseball. He's off to a pretty solid start this year. He's also shown fantasy upside with a little power and speed. And then you've got the rest of the lineup. Vinny Pasquantino, he's a well-regarded prospect. Beyond that, though, this lineup is nothing but replacement level players. So the reason I am siding with Alek Manoah as my number one favorite overall pitcher today, and by the way, Kershaw is my second favorite. It's just because this lineup sucks so much. I know that yesterday we only got mediocre results out of Gausman. He was good, but not great against the Royals. I just think that the floor is so high for Alek Manoah because it's hard to see him getting into trouble against this offense.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm right there with Manoah. He's one of my more highly projected pitchers. He's in the top 4. He's fourth, right ahead of Robbie Ray. Strangely, behind Jose Urquidy, who I'm sure we'll talk about. That's another one that's just purely matchup based going up against the Athletics. He's getting a little bit of a bump. But yeah, Manoah looks great. He's getting a little bit of attention, but it's attention I don't mind given that matchup. The one thing I would say, you do get like little weird spots like Nicky Lopez, only a 13.4% strikeout rate. Not going to put the fear of God into anybody, but might be a flat spot for strikeouts. But then you do get offsets from that for some of these other guys, the O'Hearns of the world, pushing 30% strikeout rate. So plenty of Ks in that lineup for Manoah. Nick Prado, another premium prospect in the middle of that lineup now. The other interesting wrinkle is that both Prado and Eaton not available on FanDuel. So if you're looking at being contrarian and stacking Royals, it's just not a good spot. You're going up against a good pitcher, and you're only doing it with like a half a lineup, and a bad half of a lineup at that. So Royals off the table. Manoah definitely very much on it for me.
Yeah, those are the two guys I like getting to the most. And something else that's kind of nice, at least for DraftKings purposes, the ownership's kind of modest. 25% on Kershaw, 28% for Manoah. That's all reasonable. Also on FanDuel, 16% for Manoah. Kershaw only picking up 9% on FanDuel. Considering his ownership is so low on FanDuel, he would be my number one guy there. DK's a little different because they have the exact same ownership. But considering that Kershaw is about half as owned on FD, I think that would be my priority there. And I know you primarily play on FanDuel, so I totally get why Kershaw would be your number one guy to go to there. We'll get back to these pitchers in a second. First, I want to answer a super chat from Mr. Nice Guy. He's saying FanDuel, he has 4 Atlanta Braves and 3 Seattle Mariners in his lineup. His pitcher is Hunter Green. He's 2,600 left for second base. Would you play Edman versus your own pitcher or pivot? There's no reason to play a hitter versus your pitcher on a slate of this size. So here's what we're going to do. Let me look at the pricing because I don't know exactly who's in that price range off the top of my head. I don't want to put words in your mouth there, but I know your answer is the same as mine. So let's find who we want him to roster for 2,600 at second base instead.
$2,600 second baseman on FanDuel.
Yes,
right
sir.
Off the top, you can have a leadoff Josh Van Meter.
Yeah, Josh Van Meter playing.
Right.
Coors Field bat. I think that is more than reasonable.
My highest projected second baseman on FanDuel by almost a full point, by like 0.8.
Yeah, and same price as Tommy Edman. I agree with you. I think this is pretty easy. The answer is to go to Van Meter. He's also lesser owned than Tommy Edman, which is also something that's pretty decent. And he's going to be fairly popular as a one-off. But at the same time, too, you're playing Hunter Green at pitcher, so you don't have to worry too much about ownership in the rest of your lineup. So I think we have common ground there. Josh Van Meter, that is the guy to go to. So Mr. Nice Guy, plug in Van Meter, and good luck tonight. Let's get back to the pitchers, and I want to ask you, we went over the guys we like the most at the high end. Is there anybody you dislike at the top end of this pricing range? Because we do have guys like Robbie Ray and Brandon Woodruff also in the mix who are picking up a fair amount of ownership as well.
I mean, Robbie Ray, I don't necessarily trust very much at all ever, but that's just, kind of a little bit of bias, and the numbers do look fairly good going up against Texas here. So I don't have an issue with playing him. He's probably, if I'm just doing it on that, probably the guy that I would kind of skew downward a little bit versus the field. 1070, 17.9% owned on FanDuel. He's 34.6% for 9,800 on DK. I like the price better on the DK slate. That FanDuel price is just a little bit aggressive, but he does project fifth for me. It's not like he's down the board really at all. I don't mind the matchup all that much against Texas. Plenty of strikeouts there. There's a couple threats in the lineup. If he puts a few guys on base, if his contact issues creep up on him, that's where you get into trouble. But you're kind of that's the known commodity with Robbie Ray. He's got a little bit of issues with contact. He's got a little bit of issues with walks when he's not on, but you're getting a good strikeout rate, 27.6% strikeout rate, 8.5% walks this year, 3.60% home run rate, 39.1% hard hit. You can definitely get away with Robbie Ray here. So there's nobody I really dislike at the top end in terms of the prices. Going by FanDuel prices, I would maybe throw Patrick Sandoval into that mix just because I like the pitcher. I just don't like the matchup against the Dodgers, and I don't really see the need to go for it for 9,400. So I would call him out there. He's differently priced at 8,100 on DK, so it doesn't really fit the answer on DK.
Yeah, and for me, Yu Darvish is another one on FanDuel. It's just kind of hard for me to get to because I think all of the guys priced around him are better pitchers at this point in their careers. And Yu Darvish has still managed to find success this year, but he isn't generating strikeouts anymore. He's never had a strikeout rate under 27% for his career heading into this year. And it's only 22% this year. He's 35 years old. So I definitely think that has to play some sort of factor in this. His fastball velocity actually hasn't dipped, but it's still, there's something that isn't quite the same with Yu Darvish. His spin rates aren't the same. His off-speed pitches don't seem to have quite the same bite on them. Maybe it goes back to, I know somebody had commented on this in my MLB betting video earlier today, which I think is probably another good shout out, is the point in time last year where strikeout rate kind of started to dip was when the banned sticky substance came into play. So maybe that's something that's also playing a factor, but good matchup for Yu Darvish against the Diamondbacks, but I just don't think he has the same upside of the other guys here because the strikeouts haven't been there this season.
Yeah, he's still projecting decently well based on that matchup. I just get him through a lot of innings, get him probably getting out to like the quality start. But I agree, the strikeouts are a little bit concerning. 22.4% for the season. What's a little encouraging about it, I guess, is that it's still an 11.6% swinging strike rate, 29.9% CSW. Last year, 12.1, 30.3. So it's not like he's dropped from like a 12% strikeout swinging strike rate to an 8% swinging strike rate. He's throwing around the same number of strikes, just not generating those putaways. So I haven't looked a ton into it, but it still does come through my model okay in terms of the matchup. But I agree, I like the strikeout upside from those other guys better. So I'm going to just naturally have some of those guys come out ahead of him anyway. And then I think once we start playing the games, I'll get to a little bit because he's only 7% owned on FanDuel, and I believe enough to get there. But at 10-2, I just wish he was a little bit cheaper than that if I'm going to be playing that game. So out of the expensive guys, yeah, I agree, he'd probably be the third guy on that list at best.
Yeah, it's hard for me to prioritize Yu Darvish today. And then kind of honestly, in general with this slate, it's hard for me to prioritize anybody who's all that cheap because we've had this situation with DraftKings that I've brought up so many times over the last few weeks. They've just said, fuck it, when it comes to high-end pitchers. Like, everybody's cheap now. And then FanDuel's always had soft pricing where there's so many cheap bats where it's kind of easy to play the pitchers you want, that I don't really love any cheap pitcher today. You know, I think you could make cases for some individual guys, but are there any cheap value options at pitcher that you could really say like, oh, this is a really good tournament play for any reason?
I mean, like I said before, Jose Urquidy pops up for me just based on that matchup against the just miserable Athletics. Not a premium strikeout pitcher, 17.3% for the season, a 4.57 xFIP to a 4.0 ERA. He's even allowed a strong home run rate with a 4.26% home run rate, 44.3% hard hit. It's just that the A's are so bad, a lot of pitchers project pretty well against them, and he happens to be one of them. I don't really trust it. It's a play where 8,000 on DK, 15% of the field's going to be there. That feels about right. So like, I don't think you're really gaining unless you're pushing the issue on the ownership there. And I don't know that I want to do that for this pitcher. There's just so many good options at the top end that are just so much more likely to outscore him. If he was in here at, in the $6,000 on DK, in the, the $6,000 range on FanDuel, then maybe it's a little bit more interesting based on that savings, but I just don't think you're saving enough. So it projects out all right, but I don't love it. And then, similarly, just like to your point, a guy like an Alex Wood projects okay, kind of in that mid range for me, in the mid eights. But again, I don't think we need to go there when we've got guys like Kershaw who are going a little bit under-owned, in my opinion. So I won't be forcing the issue. If I get shares of them around the edges, if I get shares of German Marquez for the big discount, even at Coors against the Pirates, I'll take them. But it's not something I'm really, really going out of my way to do, like I do on a lot of slates. I do pay down at pitching quite a bit. So it's just one of those slates where there's just so many good options that I think I can stay at the high end.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too, is I'm running my builds, and it's just really a lot of higher end pitchers that are popping up. I'll also say, because I like to give out this information, people ask fairly frequently. My single lineup for single entry today, my pitching combination, it's Manoah and Kershaw. That's what I'm going with on DraftKings. That's what I've settled on. I like those two as a combination. Some other news right now. Nathan Eovaldi is going to be limited to around 80 pitches today. Does that have any impact on this slate for you? It's been a minute since we've seen Eovaldi at the big leagues. He didn't work very deep into his most recent minor league start, but it was very much up in the air how many pitches he was going to throw. 80 pitches for Eovaldi. It was already a tough matchup for him against the Yankees. It takes him off the table for me. He had a really low strikeout total at books today at 4.5. And it was a situation where I had said earlier in the day that if we were to find out that it was 90 plus or it was unrestricted, I really like that over 4.5 strikeout prop. At 80 pitches, I'm going to stay away. But what is your take on Eovaldi throwing 80 pitches or somewhere around 80 today?
Maybe a tiny little minor kick to the Yankees in terms of the quality. There's nobody really going there outside of Aaron Judge, drawing a little bit of ownership on FanDuel. So maybe if you get the idea of getting into the bullpen a little bit earlier, getting away from Eovaldi a little bit earlier. That said, Eovaldi so far this season in his 68 1/3, 11.7% barrel rate, and a 5.73% home run rate. So he's been giving up the long ball a little bit. Like I said, maybe a minor kick to the Yankees offense, but nothing crazy based on that. Because 80 pitches, you find some strikeouts, you get through some clean innings, and you're suddenly 5 innings deep, and you're still, kind of over the top against a good pitcher. So it's not one I'm going to go out of my way for, I don't think, to really make adjustments here.
And then I think I know where you're going with this, but since you brought it up in the intro, I really want to know, what is the case you're making for German Marquez as a large field GPP? Because I'm with you. I also think that it's a good guy to get to only in large field GPPs. If you're somebody who plays 1, 3, 10 lineups, I wouldn't be recommending Marquez. But if you're max entering contests, I do think he makes sense today, especially with all of the ownership going to the Pirates. This is the team that's expected to be the most popular team on the slate, and it's not really a good offense. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yep. So I want to know, what is it that has you getting to German Marquez? And I know it's somebody who's not going to be a super high priority play for you, but he's going to be in the mix to some extent. So just want to know what the reasoning is for you to want to get to him.
It's a pitcher that I have a minor amount of faith in, more based on years past than what he's done this year. This year, a 4.10 xFIP is perfectly fine. That's good. The 5.66 ERA is concerning, like on the surface level, but what I care about is the xFIP. So the run prevention is okay. Only a 19% strikeout rate, 8.7% walk rate this year. In years past, he's been upward of a 23, 25% strikeout guy, a little bit above average strikeout rate guy, and he's always been good at pitching at Coors Field. For his career, at least before this season, he had a better xFIP at home than he did on the road. So he's a guy who just knows how to pitch in this ballpark. So you can kind of mitigate the park factors a little bit, and you're dealing with one of the worst offenses in the league. So just because they're playing in a good ballpark doesn't magically make them an incredible offense now. It helps, but you're still talking about a team with a 24.7% strikeout rate against righties. That's 27th out of 30 teams. And 89 WRC plus is 11% worse than average creating runs in the split. That's 26th in baseball. So the Pirates remain not very good. So I'm usually content to throw basically any pitcher at them. A pitcher that I've trust is a tough word with Herman Marquez the way he's going this year, but a guy I have some faith in, and at a big discount. In years past, Herman Marquez would be in the high to mid 8s in this start and even at Coors Field. So you're getting a discount on him. You're getting a big discount from the other pitchers that I will be rostering, and nobody's going there. 0.5% owned on DK, 1% owned on FanDuel. You don't need it to succeed that many times at those marks if you hit your stack the right way. So for that reason, I'm going to be going there a little bit.
Yep, I dig. It's low owned, right? If you have a few shares of them over the course of 150 lineups, you're massively overweight. If you've one out of 150 lineups, you're probably overweight to them. I also think he makes sense in chalkier stacks. If you're rolling out, this is actually a spot that I've been playing some of these less chalky pitchers. Is I've been saying that, let's say a few days ago, you were really sold that the Padres were the best stack on the slate. Well, a lot of people are stacking them, but if you ran them out there with Sean Manaea as the pitcher, you're getting a slight amount of positive correlation, because in the event that the Padres were to score a lot of runs, you had Sean Manaea a little bit more likely to pick up the win bonus. Mm-hmm. And I kind of think the same thing could be said with today. If you're playing a chalky Rocky stack with Herman Marquez at pitcher, the ownership of the offense hardly matters if Marquez is the pitcher, because nobody else is going to be playing him at pitcher. So I agree. I think in large field tournaments, he certainly makes some sense. We've got a super chat here from Oliver close off. Terry, you might need some context to this, because Oliver wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Kentucky lawnmower? So the context to this is yesterday, Eric and I were trying to figure out what is, just from an innuendo standpoint, what is the dirtiest name possible for a pitch, but actually pitches that exist. And I think we decided that the screwball was the one that makes the most sense. But Oliver did post in chat the Kentucky lawnmower, which just made me laugh because it was it was so ridiculous. But do you have any thoughts on the Kentucky lawnmower?
I'm glad to find out what it was. That is a thing that definitely conjures a lot of strange images when you're just taking it in terms of the innuendo. And when you brought the pitch into it, it helps a little bit clean that up. But in my mind, Kentucky lawnmower, and just thinking of all the various Cleveland Steamer type positions that could have been, is a little concerning.
Yeah. Do you know what the well, I know the lawnmower is the lawnmower different than the Kentucky lawnmower?
I would have to think so. I mean, Kentucky lawnmower sounds like you're just bringing a relative into it, really.
All right. Well, if we got, just for the people who are not aware of the information, I'll read it off. According to UrbanDictionary.com, the lawnmower is the act of inserting a string of anal beads into a girl or guy's anus. Once the string is fully inserted with just enough to hold on to while hanging out, you place your foot on the ass and yank out the string of beads like you're starting a lawnmower. You should hear a sound like a motor trying to start that ends with a scream. And
why
then
is Tyler nodding?
Used in a sentence, because that's always the key to the definitions at the end. Honey, I could really use the lawnmower. So there we go. For those of you who are not aware, that is the lawnmower. The Kentucky lawnmower, though, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but there we go. I think Oliver really got his money's worth from that super chat. I don't know what he was looking for, but I can't bring any DFS relevance in that. But oh boy, we've got more super chats rolling in here. Brian Nelson, drunk linguist where we riot. You know, it's funny. People just assume Eric is drunk all the time. He isn't. That's just what he's like. Super chat from Freddie Morales. Thanks for always providing so much info. Any weather concerns today? Well, that's a funny super chat after giving out the information I just gave out, but we appreciate your super chat today, Freddie. There's no particular games that I'm looking at that are causing me to take any games out of my player pool. So if we look at the weather report for tonight, there's a chance of rain at the Coors Field game, but it's nothing that's problematic. So I'm leaving everything in. There's nothing that I see as a potential rain issue. How about you?
Yeah, same. It was only that Coors one that was even on my radar as far as a potential situation. I'm not doing anything with it. Last I saw, it was fine.
All right. So anything else you want to bring up at pitcher? Any other guys that you think are dart plays in tournaments that we should talk about before we move on past the pitchers?
Yeah, it's kind of a short slate for me. Ian Anderson, I could, make an argument for in years past, but he hasn't been great so far this year, kind of struggling. Jordan Montgomery is there if you want him. But again, it's just kind of like what I was saying about Alex Wood, like good pitcher, okay price in the mid range, but you don't really need him today. There's just so many good options that I think you're probably doing yourself a disservice if you drop from like an Alek Manoah in a good matchup down to a Jordan Montgomery. You pick up that $900 in savings. So it's worth doing in a few spots and just do it on the guys where where you're gaining a little bit of leverage against the field, the guys that are really low owned, and then make sure you're spending your money the right way when you make the pivots there. But for me, it's really a slate where I'm prioritizing kind of the top end of pitching, which is, like I said before, kind of abnormal for me. I'm usually spreading it out more. I just don't love the spots. Another guy like a Michael Kopech, not really delivering the strikeouts anyway. Don't love the matchup against the Twins. Price is fine, 8,200, 7,600. I get it, but I just don't see it for him today. So I'm really not spreading out pitching all that as much as I normally would be, I don't think.
Yeah, and for me, my pitcher exposure is very much built around the guys at the high end. Anything else is just kind of a dart play for me. The one, if I had to roster one and somebody said, who is the best GPP play for cheap, I would say German Marquez, but I also don't think he warrants more than a couple of lineups worth of exposure over the course of 150 lineups. So it's primarily going to be the spend up options for me. That's really where I'm building my lineups around. So before we get into stocks, I don't know why I said stocks. I kind of said it was something in between stacks and stocks, and I made up some other word there. Been spending too much time on Urban Dictionary, Terry. My mind's on other things. But today's show is sponsored by Odd Shopper. If you guys have not checked out Odd Shopper yet, what are you missing? Why not? You're missing out here. This is the easiest way to place prop bets in the entire industry. You go over to oddshopper.com, you click on our MLB player props, and you're just getting projected win rates, projected ROIs across all of the books that are available in your area, and it's free to use. Also, something else to take advantage of. If you guys haven't signed up at BetMGM yet, you get $200 for free when you do it for the first time. Do you like free money, Terry?
Yeah, I've heard good things.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like, would you like more money than you know what to do with? More money than you could ever imagine in your dreams?
I would like more money.
All right. Well, all you have to do to make this come true is you sign up over at BetMGM. You click on the link in the description box below. And then after you do that, you place $10 on any MLB money line tonight, and they'll give you $200 for free. That's it. And then you go out, you take that $200, you buy a helicopter or a jet. I don't know the fair value of money these days, but I'm sure it gets you some pretty good shit. So go check out BetMGM using the link below, and it's free money, right? Why pass up free money? But once you get that free money, what are you going to bet on? You're going to go to Odd Shopper and you're going to look for some of the best bets today. So I'm just scrolling over there right now, seeing what's available for the day. One thing I will point out that's no longer there. I think this is my favorite bet I've ever placed, Terry. I have for today, Luis Patino under 4.5 strikeouts.
I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah. Well,
according to be out there for very long.
According to Kevin Cash, he might only pitch one inning. So I saw that because I'm a crazy person, and I was up at like 4 a.m. this morning, flipping the core passes on DraftKings to make a few bucks because I couldn't sleep. So I'm doing that, and then the prop odds come up. I see them come up on DK Sportsbook. So I start to scroll through, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. There's a strikeout prop listed for Luis Patino. Then I go scroll online, and I see, according to Kevin Cash, he's only going to pitch 1 or 2 innings today. I'm like, boy, 4.5, that seems pretty safe. He's only pitched 1 or 2 innings. So I bet as much money as they would allow me to on the under. I think it's legitimately, I think that's my favorite prop that I've ever played. So let's look into some of the Odd Shopper props right now. And I'm curious if any of this stands out to you. Robbie Ray, I know you said that you don't trust him. You're not crazy high on him. His over-under for strikeouts is 7.5. We haven't projected for 6.8 today, which has a little bit of value on the under. How'd you feel about under 7.5 Ks for Robbie Ray?
Yeah, I've got him slightly higher than the site does. I've got him floating just around 7, but I am under that 7.5 mark. So maybe a little bit less confidence than what the site is saying, but I would be, if I was betting on it, I would be taking the under there. Site looks like we've got it at 63% probability on that 7.5 based on the betting tool on the site.
Yeah, I think so. That's a number that I don't think is bad. One thing also about looking at some of these numbers and something like eventually DK wisened up and they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have a 4.5 strikeout prop for a pitcher who might only pitch 1 inning. So they pulled it down. So you should be looking at a lot of these props early in the day before they really get steamed and move around a whole bunch, because, you know, once you get later on in the day, there's a little bit less value to be had. In terms of a home run prop, let's see what looks decent here. Rafael Devers at plus 550. We have him hitting a home run 20% of the time. I know the matchup for him, it's left on left against Jordan Montgomery, isn't the best in the world, but Rafael Devers is a good enough hitter. I don't know that he should ever be plus 550 to homer. It was the same logic I got to the other day when I bet Vlad Guerrero also at plus 550 to homer against Zach Wheeler. So matchup might not be the best in the world for Devers, but what would you make of a plus 550 prop to homer?
Yeah, I don't mind that. If you're getting a nice price like that on a hitter of that quality, I'll take that any day of the week. So that's a pretty solid one from just a potential ROI perspective. It's down the board a little bit in terms of our expected win rate. It's sitting at 20%. So you get some guys like Matt Olson ahead of him, Paul Goldschmidt, but you're talking about a lot of star caliber players ahead of him. And Rafael Devers sitting at that big 15% potential ROI. Looks like the highest potential ROI on the board there. So I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, and so those are the things right now that kind of stand out to me. I would still be okay with the under for Robbie Ray. Obviously, I would like to tell everybody just go slam Patino, but that is wisely been taken off the board by DK. Devers is a home run pick. Don't mind that. But other than that, it does look like there's a lot of fair lines, at least at this point in the day. So, Terry, let's move on over to stacks now. And guys, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Helps us out a whole bunch when it comes to the YouTube algorithm. Who are you prioritizing at stacks today? Because I know you said you're not going to be really high on Coors Field. We'll touch on them in a second. But what is your number one stack of the day if it isn't one of the teams at Coors?
I haven't gotten to my sorting process yet, taking a little time to get these lineups built out and put in there. But the Braves were profiling really, really well for me against Pat Corbin. He's a pitcher that tends to come up, the opposing team tends to come up quite a bit for me. The Blue Jays look pretty good against Zach Greinke for me. I was getting to a decent amount of the cards against Hunter Green just based on the strikeout rate potential there, or excuse me, the power potential there. So those three teams were at the top of my board in terms of my power index. If they were at the top of the crunches I was running earlier in the day. So I expect I'll be getting quite a bit of each of those three teams.
So for me, it's the Braves. And, I really like picking on Patrick Corbin, but in general, when he's on the mound, the team going against him is crazy popular, and it does become somewhat prohibitive for me. What's nice about there being a Coors Field game today is we're getting kind of reduced ownership on the Braves versus what we would normally get. So it's a positively leveraged team. And if we could get a positively leveraged team that's also a good offense against Patrick Corbin, sign me up. 8% ownership share, 11% top stack odds over on DK. On FanDuel, 9% ownership, 10% top stack odds. So, for FanDuel purposes, there's a little bit more ownership and slightly lower top stack odds, but still, it's a team that looks like it's going a little bit underrepresented. And Patrick Corbin's on the other side, and he sucks. He is no longer a viable big league pitcher. Patrick Corbin this year is a 5.7 ERA, a 5.77 expected ERA. Doesn't really generate swing and misses. Gives up a whole bunch of home runs. His home run to fly ball rate this year, 14.4%. Last year was 22.6%. I didn't even know that was possible over a full baseball season, let alone somebody who's, what's that contract? It's 6 years, 140 million. That's not great.
Yeah, no. And he went pop awfully fast. Like he went from being a pretty damn good lefty pitcher to just being a target really, really quickly. And, we finally caught up. Like you said, the other team does typically get a little bit of ownership going against them these days, but not so much today. Even on FanDuel, like you said, Acuna a little bit more owned in the 20s on the FanDuel slate, but you immediately drop down. Matt Olson under 10%, Austin Riley under 10%. I'm happy to take those shots. Marcelo Zuna sitting at 4.8%. So no issues really getting to Braves in any configuration here. And like you were saying, I mean, to add on to the Pat Corbin targeting here, 44.1% hard hit against this year, 9.6% barrel rate, still a 3.40% home run rate. Last year it was 4.93 to further your point about last season. So he's got it under control a little bit, but he's super targetable, doesn't strike people out anymore. So the Braves are probably going to be my highest owned stack. Maybe it gets offset a little bit by that popularity at the top end, but probably not very much. I'll have a ton of Braves.
Got a super chat here from Ryan Nelson. We're on the same page when it comes to the Braves, by the way. Ryan Nelson, is Greg the Grinder or 4 a.m. Greg your film name? Unfortunately, Eric Traub in chat, he already answered the question. It's Third Leg Greg all day, all night. That's the name.
Why is that unfortunate?
Well, because I want because it was the answer I had on my mind, and then he already types it, so it's like but now I can't, and I didn't have another improv name to go to.
Gotcha.
So it's what happens sometimes, but we're all on the same page. Shout out to Eric Traub in the chat. So I want to ask you now about Coors Field, because these are the two most popular offenses on the slate. We've got the Pittsburgh Pirates, projected for 15% ownership on DK, very negatively leveraged. Then we've got the Rockies projected for around 12% ownership. Over on FanDuel, a little bit different. We still have a lot of ownership going to the Pirates, but it is the Rockies who are more popular. 13% ownership for the Rockies on FanDuel, 10% on Pittsburgh. So we've got two fairly popular offenses. It's Coors Field. The pitchers do leave a little bit to be desired. Jose Quintana and then German Marquez. He's dropped off a little bit versus what he was in previous years. But all that aside, how are you going to handle these teams at Coors Field where there's still obvious upside?
Yeah, I'll have some. I'll probably be under based on a little bit of popularity, but it is a big slate. So you don't get the overwhelming 30% guys across the board. So you can play either side here if you want to. I'll have some. I'll probably come in below on like a 18% on Chris Bryant. If I'm at 10, I'm happy about that. And it'll always be in stacks, maybe a couple one-offs there. On the Pirates side of things, a little less enthusiastic. If I get some, one-offs or some small stacks around like an O'Neal Cruz, Brian Hayes, Dan Vogelbach in the middle of the lineup, perfectly fine. I have no issues with it. I have no, fear about rostering anybody against German Marquez. I just don't think I'm going to be going hand in hand with the field on that when there's so many other spots to spread out to. So it's just typically how I approach Coors. I tend to go away from the field. And, if I get maybe around if I'm looking at the Rockies side of things, Charlie Blackmon a little under owned, CJ Cron a little low owned at 11% for Cron, 8.9% for Blackmon. I know it's lefty, but Jose Quintana, not exactly a fear of God type of a lefty. And Charlie Blackmon, if I'm going off the top of my head, I think he handles left-handed pitching for his career okay. Not great. I think the power dissipates a little bit, but the run creation's all right. It's top of my head, so forgive me if I'm wrong about that. But I'll take shots low on there just for the Coors Field of it. Ryan McMahon, similar story, another lefty later in the lineup. So there are spots you can get to here. So I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite spot just based on the team.
Yeah, no, I'm fairly sure you are right there that Charlie Blackmon is, I know this year he's been quite a bit better against righties than lefties. At least he's gotten on base against lefties, but I think he just hasn't had power numbers.
Yeah, I know the power goes away for sure.
Yeah, we've got he's got a 107 WRC plus against lefties, 109 against righties. The ISO is a big difference, 223 against righties compared to 152 against lefties, but still he's getting on base against lefties. Overall, it's kind of evening out. And at some point he's going to face a right-hand pitcher, especially if the stack works out. If Jose Quintana pitches 6 innings, it almost doesn't even matter what happens at that point. So you're really looking for them to knock around Jose Quintana and for them to get into the bullpen fairly early anyway for the stack to be successful. Mm-hmm. And just because it's a left-on-left matchup, it's funny. Even when somebody has bad splits, I kind of like them in stacks anyway, just because it's like, well, if I need the stack to work, I need the starting pitcher to get out. And it's fairly often it'll be like, how many times have we seen the Yankees are a really popular stack and they're going up against a left-hand pitcher? Everybody's playing Judge, everybody's playing Stanton, and nobody plays Rizzo because he's going up against the lefty. And clearly those other guys hit lefties better. But to me, it's like, all right, but I could get Rizzo for 1/10 of the ownership. So I'm not really that
spot in popular stacks. It's something I specifically will look for with, and definitely around a guy like Rizzo, around a guy like Matt Olson, lefty. Like people overrate it for guys that it doesn't even impact where they're just good against lefties. And then like you're saying, even when they're bad against lefties, if you still think the stack spot is good, you're getting into the bullpen early, you're getting righties, and a guy like Anthony Rizzo or a guy like Matt Olson can hit one out lefty for you anytime. So I have no issues doing that. It's actually one of my preferred spots to look for.
Yeah, because the ownership always comes with it. Even if somebody is a lower projection,
you get that discount.
Yeah, you get an ownership discount that more than offsets the probability of the success there. So, I'm with you. I think Charlie Blackmon's not a bad guy to throw into some of those stacks either. But I want to know, what contrarian stacks are you looking at today? Because we talked about liking the Braves as a high-end stack. They're going to be popular, less so, at least in our projections, than teams like the Pirates or the Rockies. But still, we've covered 3 of the more popular teams on the entire slate. What's a contrarian team you really like getting to for offensive purposes?
Let's see. I got one that we can take a look at here. So as suspected, I was getting a ton of Braves, ton of Cards up top, getting to some Dodgers in here now. I'm just looking at the distributions, how they're coming out of the lineup builder before I get to the sort. Red Sox are actually coming up a little bit more than I thought they would be around some of that righty pop. So that's a little interesting to me. I don't think they were drawing very much attention, but I hadn't really looked them over. Yeah, drawing under 1% ownership across the board as the away team playing in Yankee Stadium. Like I said, I think Jordan Montgomery is a good pitcher. Doesn't give up a ton of home runs. Not the best strikeout pitcher in the world, 19.6% strikeout rate, but he doesn't walk a ton of people. So I don't love that spot, but with nobody going to it around Devers, who we talked about in the betting conversation, and then JD Martinez and Bogarts, who hit left-handed pitching better than any 2 hitters hitters in the league. And then if I'm getting some Verdugo, some Dahlbeck around the edges of that, I'm fine with that if they're going to be that low owned. They're not expensive. They're pretty cheap, in fact, on FanDuel. So that's one that's surprising me a little bit, just taking a look at this. And then, some Blue Jays, some Twins, some Astros, a lot of just even distribution, though. That's kind of how I run the lineup builds, is just so I get a lot of even distribution of lineups, and then I let the sort take care of it.
Yeah, we've got our guy Oliver Closeoff. He's back in chat. He wants to know, what would you do for German Marquez no now? So here's where Eric overplays his hand. He bets against himself with no upside for no reason. He does this really frequently. That's how he ends up doing stuff like having to shave his eyebrows on shows or doing other stupid shit, because he makes bets for no reason about nothing. Nobody isn't taking the other side of him. He argues with himself, and then he's like, yeah, I'll show myself. So what ended up happening the other day is Eric ends up saying that he would get a tattoo if it was Chad Kuhl. If Chad Kuhl pitched a perfect game against the Padres at Coors Field the other day. And then I had said that it had to be a live tattoo on his neck, though. He agreed. Ultimately, Chad Kuhl had a good run, but unfortunately, Jake Cronenworth, the second batter of the game, hit a home run. But here's where Terry's smart.
It's all downside, though.
Yeah, here's where Terry's smart. Unlike Eric. You know what Terry's going to do if German Marquez pitches a no-hitter? He's going to win money today.
There you go.
That's what you do. You win. You win money. That's what you do. You win money. You don't permanently put something dumb on your body like Eric Lindquist might do, or Josh Engelman for that matter, because he's getting a lip tattoo next week because of a bet he lost with Laffy.
Oh, is that actually going down next week?
Yeah, we're going.
Nice.
Next week he's going to be getting the lip tattoo. I forget what's going to be on it, but
I forgot what they're.
This is just a producer shout, and we could also get Chat's opinion. Chat, would you like to see a Josh Engelman vlog of getting a lip tattoo from that bet? Because I think that's quality content for the channel.
Yeah, no, that has to be on the channel.
He's going to record it. We're trying to figure out if anybody else is allowed in the tattoo parlor or not. Because part of the issue too is it's going to be in Chicago, so big city. COVID restrictions and whatnot. Like, we don't know if that's even viable. And then oftentimes tattoo parlors apparently don't even let you bring other people in anyway. So we'll see. But guys, it's going to be content coming in one form or another, whether it's on Twitter, YouTube, some form of social media. You guys are going to see Josh paying his dues for being an idiot. It's gonna come to fruition with a tattoo on his lip, which seems very painful to me.
It sounds horrible. I don't have any tattoos at all, so I don't really have a frame of reference for how painful like one on my arm would be. But that's just like, if I could pick a spot, that's one of the worst spots I can imagine. I can't imagine that.
I've had a few friends get them. They say they're not bad. They're not like worse than like a rib tattoo or anything like that. It's kind of just like, a
rim tattoo. I don't want
a rib.
A rib. Gotcha.
So, yeah, those hurt.
Right now, I'm Mitchell Welsh, Josh getting a dick tattoo on his lip. I don't actually know what the tattoo is, but one thing I will say is I'm sitting here and just kind of biting my lip like this to see there's not that many nerves there, so maybe it's not so bad. Like, there's other spots, like I imagine neck would be really sensitive, wrist. Have you ever been chewing and like you just bite your lip, like you're biting into a sandwich or something, you just get your lip by it? That hurts like a bitch. Yeah, but that's also because you're breaking skin and making yourself bleed and hitting. Isn't that what a tattoo does? Not to the same extent, but it's also, it's like, it's really common that people have tattoos on their wrists. I would imagine that's fairly painful. Like, wrists have a lot of nerves around there. Yeah, I've heard that one's really painful. A friend of mine's in the process over like 15 different visits trying to get one removed from her wrist, and doesn't really work out. It's just a lot of pain, and then you pay them, and it doesn't really disappear. Shauno 53, he's getting a lawnmower tattoo on his butt cheek. Inside bicep hurts like hell, according to Corey Bomber. Yeah, another one I can imagine would hurt. Yeah. What's the, if I looked it up, what do you think is the most other than like getting your? I've heard when you get it like right over bone, it hurts a lot. Like on the back of your hand, hurts a lot. Most painful place to get a tattoo. I know it's going to come as like penis right away, but I mean, you have to be like an insane person to do that. All right, so. Most painful tattoo spots, according to this is, and by the way, this is the first thing that came up on Google, which means that it's the truth. Ribs, number 1. Okay. Back of the knees, number 2. That seems weird. Back of the knees. Yeah, isn't that like a popular spot for? I guess that's true. I think of it more as calf, but yeah, that does also bleed into the knees. Hips, stomach. I wouldn't think stomach. I guess it depends how fat you are. Right? Like, if I would think that's kind of easy one.
Although
like if you're the
rabies
size
season-
of Dan Vogelbach or any average first baseman, like you're not feeling anything on your stomach. Neck 5, I would think neck would be higher up. That seems very, very painful to me. Head, face, ears, lips are 7. There we go. We got lips at 7. All right, so maybe it is painful.
Does anybody out there have an eyeball tattoo? Some lunatics got to, right? With all this like body disfigurement, people turning themselves into like a living Barbie doll, things like that.
Like in the world?
Some lunatic out there has an eyeball tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mean like in our chat.
Oh, I thought in our chat, if we have one in our chat, you need to make yourself known because you're a legend.
Look, if that person is out there, there's this fairly strong probability that they're also in our chat. So
wouldn't your eyeball just pop? You can't you can't just have like a needle in it.
Well, I mean, you're the one who said it doesn't like, pierce your skin enough to make your lip hurt. I'm just going by that.
Yeah, but this is different than putting a needle in your eyeball.
There's got to be a way.
All right, let's get back to stacks. Get this back on the road. We got 10 minutes left here to talk about the baseball slate. Do us a favor, guys. Once again, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really do appreciate it a whole bunch. Helps us continue to put out some free content here. I want to know, Terry, if you're playing a 1% owned offense today, it's a big slate. There's a lot of games. There's always going to be a couple 1%ers out there that really make sense. But if you could only play one and tell people this is the best 1% owned stack on the slate, which is it that you'd gravitate towards? And if the answer is none, that's also a fair answer.
It looks like the New York Yankees are sitting at a 0.9. I mean, it wasn't a target for me. And I guess the Red Sox would fit into that equation as well, since I was just talking about them and their own right about the same number. So either one of those teams playing in the Homer Happy ballpark in the Bronx, I guess I can get behind from a low owned perspective. They're both high quality teams that you can get to on any given slate in any given matchup, but it's two good pitchers, Eovaldi and Montgomery. Even if Eovaldi's only limited to like 80 pitches, like we talked about, still two good pitchers for most of the game. So wasn't a standout spot for me, but definitely low owned. Happy to get there, positively leveraged. One that's a little bit higher owned than that, but still very low owned, is the Dodgers against Patrick Sandoval. Another pitcher who, like I said, when we were talking pitchers, good pitcher, not a guy I'm targeting based on that matchup. But the Dodgers on the DK slate, 2.7% owned, when like the Braves are 4 times that amount. That's an interesting enough spot to me against any pitcher that I can get to some Dodger stacks here as well. So just on a purely ownership basis, I think any one of those teams is perfectly fine.
By the way, we've got people in chat who are wondering who the other voice is. That's Tyler, the producer. And the reason you can't see him is because he's a vampire. And if you guys know anything about vampires, they don't show up in pictures, they don't show up on video. So even if we had him on there, it would just be nothing. It would just be invisible. All you'd see is the mess that his dog made behind him. So we can't have Tyler on camera for that reason. He doesn't want people to see his messy apartment. And then, just also the issue where he's not going to show up on camera. So, maybe one day Tyler will get it figured out, but we're not there quite yet. I know I'm pretty translucent myself, but Tyler brings it to a whole nother level by just
that new telescope gives me hope.
Tyler
Greg.
would just be a weird shimmering void.
That new telescope gives me hope. Technology will one day be able to see me.
Dude, those are pretty cool looking photos.
Incredible, and it makes my head hurt to think about how old the photo and how long light take. It made my head hurt.
See, this was not the take that I expected Tyler to have, because for you guys who don't know, which none of you do because you don't even hear Tyler's voice, you don't know who that is. He's a conspiracy theorist who lives in Texas. I thought he was immediately going to jump to all of its fake pictures.
Oh no, dude!
You buy into those? They're real.
Yeah,
all right.
There's some
Texas
stuff
too.
out there.
They need the aerospace industry down in Texas. They can't get on board that. Houston, it's a big part of the whole thing down there.
If I'm going to play 1% on, if I'm going to play 1% on stack today, it's the New York Yankees for me. Nathan Eovaldi coming off a long layoff. He's got that 80 pitch restriction now. You never know exactly what you're getting from one of these guys after a long layoff. And I think this is potentially a spot where the Yankees could get to him and rough him up a little bit. I love Eovaldi as a pitcher. I think he's really good. It's crazy to me that he was the one guy who's generally, and I know he's coming off the injured list now, but he's been the Red Sox one pitcher that's stayed relatively healthy over the last couple of years, when that was the only thing that you could guarantee with Eovaldi in the past was that he was going to get hurt at some point in the year. In general, he's been a workhorse over the last couple of years, but just with the uncertainty with him coming off the injured list, and then you just don't know where he's at health-wise, I think this is a spot where the Yankees could have upside at low ownership, which whenever you're getting the Yankees at 1% ownership, there's a pretty good chance I'm interested anyway. But Yankees, that's a team that makes sense to me.
Yep. And definitely, like I was saying, both sides of that one are coming up a little bit for me. I'm looking at the sort now. So like I expected, my top 3 owned teams that aren't playing in Coors are the Braves, the Cardinals, and the Blue Jays. Looks like I'm getting a little bit of Reds in there, and I'm getting more Pirates than I expected to. So I'm going to take a quick peek at that and make sure that they're quality lineups that I'm happy with how they come together. But those are my top end teams. And then it hits kind of a plateau where there's just a smattering of like Twins, Astros, Royals, Brewers, just a handful of all of those teams. So the teams I thought were going to be coming up are coming up quite a bit in here, which is good. You like when the process works.
I want to ask you now, is there any team that's picking up a bunch of ownership that you don't really like? Because there's one that sticks out to me, and I'm curious if it does to you as well.
For me, it's probably the Pirates. That's probably the answer there. It's a team that, for better or worse, like I said at the beginning of the year, there is, people are going to win some tournaments with this team. They're better than people think, and they have been in a lot of spots. But overall, in the aggregate, not great. Getting a lot of ownership at Coors Field, coming up a lot for me. So it's a naturally good spot, but it's one that I'm probably going to try and get a little bit under where they're coming up for me right now.
It's the Guardians for me at this moment. So their ownership has really come up a whole bunch during the day. We're now looking at, let me refresh to make sure this is still the most recent numbers, but last I looked, they had double-digit ownership on both DK and FanDuel, which that's hard for me to get behind. And we have them at 10.4% on DK at the latest look. And then over on FanDuel, the aggregate ownership for Cleveland is 11.7%. So they're now the second most popular offense on all of FanDuel, and they're also close to the top on DK. It's a good spot for them against Drew Hutchison. I don't think Drew Hutchison is a major league caliber pitcher at all. I'm actually confused how he's still pitching in the big leagues at age 31, considering that he's been a replacement level pitcher now for 8-9 years, something like that. And he's still managed to keep the job. But at the same time too, I don't think Cleveland in this spot warrants this much ownership when you've got teams like the Braves going up against Patrick Corbin. He got a Coors Field game and they have comparable ownership to those teams. So I think that they're the least appealing of those 4 really high owned teams. And that's why, to me, Cleveland's a team to be underway to, if not just outright fade and look elsewhere.
I do not disagree with that at all. Cleveland was a little bit downboard for me just through most of the day because they weren't getting big power marks. The odd thing about Hutchison over his last 50 and change innings, this year plus last year, this year 35 and a third, last year it was 28 and change, something like that. He's actually been really good at limiting power, only a 1.95% home run rate against this season. It's based on like nothing. It's a lot of happenstance in here, but it is impacting the numbers for me a little bit. So Cleveland was kind of off my radar, and the way that they're coming up in my sort, based on being that popular and having diminished numbers because of that, they're not coming up for me at all. So I can get behind that. Like 2-3% of these lineups maybe have some Guardians in it. So I'm with you on that.
And then we've only got a few minutes left here. So first, how are you doing on your lineups? Everything looking good? Yeah,
we're getting there. As long as I don't get anything weird. Windows was being really weird for me all through the day. So as long as nothing weird happens when I try and actually just save the file, like the dumbest, easiest part of this whole process, we should be good.
How many, one thing that I do, I would say once or twice per season in each sport, if I'm hosting a show or I'm on a show, I'll click a button and I'll upload the wrong CSV because I try to label them on my desktop where it's like, okay, this is MLB, and then it'll be like whatever the most recent change I made was. Like, let's say I was upping my exposure to the Braves, I'll label it like MLB Braves. Every once in a while, I'll click on the wrong CSV, and then my lineups will start like, why is this guy in my lineups? And then I realize like, oh no, it dawns on me that I've rostered the wrong things, and then more often than not, it actually works in my favor for whatever reason. Which it's been something we've seen pretty often. It happened with Eric during basketball season. There's a Joel Embiid slate where he ended up winning a bunch of money because he accidentally played Joel Embiid in all his lineups. Same, Adam had a 6-figure win because he didn't upload his CSV in time, and he locked in 2 players that were basically unowned that ended up being 2 of the best points per dollar play on a basketball slate. Off the top of my head, one of them was OG Anunoby. I forget who the other one was, but maybe that's something I should do more frequently, is upload the wrong CSV. But as you're working through that, is there anything that you're noticing that stands out to you in your builds that maybe you didn't think before, or that you haven't talked about during the show, that's maybe more of a priority in your lineups than you otherwise realized?
Actually, surprisingly, having to manipulate this a little bit more to get more shares of Kershaw, which I just made sure that I did. We talked about him off the top. He was one of my favorite pitchers based on the ownership, but just based on the way that some of the crunching came together, he's not floating to the top all that naturally for me, where I am getting shares of like Woodruff. I am getting shares of some of the other pitchers that we talked about here. So I'm going to have to give him a little bit of a nudge. And I was actually getting a little bit more of Darvish than I expected to. We talked about him being kind of like 5th out of 5 there. So it's an interesting shape to my slate here. I'm going to make sure I get in here and grab some of my Marquez shares as well, because, there's a lot of good reasons why he isn't coming up naturally for me.
Yeah.
So process working there, but I'm going to have to make sure to do that now. So, it's nothing overly shocking, but was surprised that I didn't get to as much Kershaw naturally there as I thought I would.
Yeah, I ended up getting to. So, I mean, I was going to prioritize Kershaw and Manoah anyway, but I just got to a whole bunch of them naturally. So it wasn't really something I had to change all that much. But yeah, those are 2 guys that I'm getting to a whole bunch of pitchers thought I was going to, and they ended up as my 2 most rostered pitchers. So Terry, that's kind of bringing us to the end of the show here. It was nice hanging out with you again. It's been a minute since we did a show together, but I just want to know before we finish here, any final thoughts on the slate or anything that people need to know before we close the show here?
If we get that Herman Marquez, let's talk like 12 strikeouts on top of it, because that would be great. It's just the no-hitter might not get us there. We need some Ks from him too. So let's throw that on top of the fire.
Yeah, I know Eric's not here today, but I'll throw something out there. If Herman Marquez pitches a perfect game with 27 strikeouts, Eric's getting that live tattoo on his neck. You could guarantee it. Guys, that does it for us today. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck tonight. I hope you guys have a great weekend.